Okay, people in the booth, we are ready. At 7:02, I will open tonight's meeting and ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we could have worked on our unity on that pledge. Okay. Good evening, everyone. And before I forget, in accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. I will start off by asking if there's any public comment from the board this evening.
I don't have any.
Any public comment from the public this evening? Okay. So, any announcements?
No, I'll wait till the town manager report. That's fine.
Okay. Humming along, starting late and still getting early for our 7:05 St. Boniface Church, 817 Mass Ave, a one-day special license for beer and wine for September 28th.
Good evening.
Good evening. Greetings.
Tom Bodkin, 64 Beale Street, member of the Oktoberfest Committee.
Claude Poirier, at 68 Wildwood Road in Hickory Hills, and also a member of the St. Boniface Oktoberfest Committee.
And we're here for one day. This is our third time doing the Oktoberfest, and so we're here for our one-day liquor license.
Beer and wine.
Or beer license, I'm sorry. That's a couple years.
Oh, yeah. Maybe next year.
Not exactly doing Jägermeister just yet, but...
Anything different this year we should know, or is it the same as last year?
Hopefully, we're going to make more money this year, but other than that, it's going to be pretty much the same.
Well, when is it? You get a free plug
Oh, I'm
here.
sorry. Yes, September 28th, come on down. It's going to be
10 to 7.
10 to 7.
Will be
and we're gonna
lunch
have,
and evening meal, so we'll have...
There's going to be a white elephant. There's going to be a Oompa Loompa band. And what else?
What is it, a Saturday?
It's Saturday,
yeah.
No rain date. Just
No
rain or
date.
shine.
Rain or shine, big tent, craft vendors and that sort of thing, so.
Excellent. Any questions from the board about the application for the special one-day license? I would entertain a motion.
Move that we approve the application for the one-day beer and wine license for September 28th, 2019 at St. Boniface.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None.
Thank you.
Thank you
luck.
very much,
Have a
folks.
great
Thank you.
event.
Come on down.
Come on down.
Hey,
Thank
pray
you.
for good weather. Does the sewer commission have all your members here? So we can... Yeah, I'm going to ask you to come up, so you can come up now with the rest of your commission if you want.
Joan Pease.
Hold on a second. Is there any reason we have to wait till 7:10? Is this officially...
Have you opened your meeting?
I would like to do it right
Okay,
now.
And what time are you posted for?
I can't hear you.
What time are you posted for?
7:15.
Okay, then you have to
7:15.
wait.
Okay, then we have to wait.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we can move to the assistant treasurer if you want.
Okay, assistant treasurer.
There's an appointment before you for your ratification for an appointment of assistant treasurer, Susan Murchie, who will be filling this, was a temporary position due to a vacancy, and so this is a permanent appointment.
How long has she worked for the town?
It's been, I feel like 2 years.
Okay, great.
Close to. Yep. So then with her moving over to the assistant treasurer position, the other position that she currently holds will be posted. And
Which is what? What is
is
it?
the principal clerk
Okay.
position. And that closes shortly, so we're hoping to interview people for that position as well. So
Great.
but this will also offer some cross-training within the office as well.
Great.
So.
I would entertain a motion, unless somebody has questions, the town manager. I'd entertain a motion on the appointment to the position of assistant treasurer.
Move we ratify the town manager's appointment of Susan Murchie to assistant treasurer.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None. You may be able to get the commissioner in too now.
Okay. All right. Very excited about this next appointment. As you all know, we've been searching for a replacement for a building commissioner for some time. Our previous building commissioner helped us fill the position for the last 2+ years. Gary Rhodes, who he came back from retirement twice, is now fully in retirement. So I'm pleased to submit for your ratification Casey Burlingame as our permanent building commissioner.
Excellent. Anything you can tell about?
Casey comes with 25 years of construction experience. He started off as a local inspector in 2014 for the city of Worcester. He currently works for the town of Southbridge and Brimfield as their deputy building commissioner and building commissioner for Brimfield.
Does he live out that way?
He lives in Spencer.
Okay.
So I move we ratify town manager's appointment for Casey Burlingame to building commissioner.
Have a
Second.
second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Glad to
Opposed?
have that, Tom.
Yes, thank you. And I just learned sewer is posted for 7:10, so we're close to it.
Oh, we got a minute. I'll take this opportunity. While she was very excited about Casey Burlingame, she was also very excited about Susan Murchie, for the record.
Yes.
I don't want anything to be misconstrued. Okay, I stalled long enough that you can open your meeting.
I'll open the September 3rd meeting of the Sewer Commission, joint with the Selectmen. We'll do a roll call for attendance.
Brian Stover.
Joan Pease.
Okay. Well, stay at the mic. Please. Please stay at the mic. So we have 2 applicants to fill the vacancies of the Sewer Commission. I see they are both here.
The Sewer Commission is delighted to have the return of 2 very dedicated past members, Mr. McDonald and Mr. Knoll. They have a wealth of historical information and a great deal of knowledge on how the sewers already function, so we're delighted that they are willing to volunteer to help us out.
Madam Town Manager, have we had any other applicants?
No.
Okay. Would you gentlemen want to say anything before we vote? Okay. I'm going to take that as a no.
Wait. He's not going to say anything?
That's why I'm quickly moving on. I don't want him to change his mind. Does the board have any questions?
I do.
Yes.
What other boards and committees are they currently on?
Now you have to come up. There you go.
Okay. I'm on the Personnel Committee. That's it. I did serve on the sewer, and, we do all kinds of stuff for the town, as you know. Building Reuse Committee, DPW Committee, Feasibility Committee. We've been involved in a lot of committees, and excuse my hair, I just got out of work.
So currently only the Personnel Committee.
Currently the Personnel.
Mr. Knoll, any committees? I'm assuming your question was to both of them.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I didn't want to be left out. I was on sewer for 3.5 years. And other than that, no other committees in town, but helped out with, whenever I can, Boys and Girls Club. Basically decorating the center of town for the last 6 years now, I believe, every year. Pretty much any needs that are out there, I step up to. I'm also run my own business, and looking forward to, at least get my feet wet in this again. So, no.
I'm avoiding any.
As my campaign went a few years ago, a vote for me would be a flush for you, so.
All right.
That's it.
Any other questions for the applicants?
No.
No, I'm just, I'd like to thank them very much for stepping forward. I know personally how valuable they have been on the Sewer Commission, and I look forward to their work renewed. Thank you.
And in an effort to keep the meeting shorter, I'll just say what she said. All right, it's a joint vote between the Board of Selectmen and the Sewer Commission, so I would entertain a motion on the two applicants.
I move to appoint Dave McDonald and Mike Knoll to the Sewer Commission.
Is everybody okay with doing them both together?
Yes.
Okay. All
Second,
right.
both?
So I will do, but do you want to do a?
Motion on our side,
Yeah, probably.
just to be safe. I move that we appoint Dave McDonald and Mike Nault to be members of the Sewer Commission.
Did he second it? I'll second
All
it.
right. No.
Second, I approve both.
All right, so you, a roll call vote from your
Yep, we'll
commission,
do a roll
please?
call vote. Joan Pease, I vote to approve.
Carl Luck, approve.
Ryan Silver also approve.
Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
Mr. Mr. McQuaid,
Aye.
Mrs. Luck,
Aye.
and an aye for me. If I did my math correct, I think you're on. So,
If I could just make one comment?
Yes.
Just not to belabor, but I want to, I'm particularly happy to have these two guys back that I worked for many years with. But I want to make it clear that, they responded very quickly to our serious need. We had trouble getting quorums. When they heard about it, they both stepped right up, and I couldn't be more delighted. And the other very positive thing is they both run businesses, and they were instrumental in helping us run this like a business track, and I'm just delighted to have them back so we can continue that work.
agree. And they both know the Sewer Commission, so there's no real learning curve, so. Excellent. Well, thank you both.
Get sworn in.
You do. You go to the town clerk anytime after now.
I'll take a motion to adjourn the Sewer Commission. Okay. Yes. We're adjourned.
Let the record show that they were adjourned. All right. Still keeping a very good pace. We have Olive Avenue Productions relative to filming for Castle Rock in Lunenburg. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you would wait 1 second while we have some exits, because it's a very creaky floor. So I'm going to let them exit first.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. My name is Joe Starjensky. I'm the location manager for the Hulu streaming show Castle Rock. And we've been filming in and around the middle of Devons and middle of Massachusetts. And we want to come to your town and film also. We have some scenes around Lake Shirley, and we're shooting at a private residence, and maybe some road scenes. So just wanted to come and answer any questions or tell you when we're going to be there or what you need to know about what we want to do.
Yeah, I guess the first thing, this is, I've been on the board for many years, and I don't think I've ever had one of these, so I don't know what does the board need to do and or know, and what do the townspeople need to know?
Well, I've been dealing a lot with Adam, and basically we're on private property. We'll be filming around Ruth Street, and our scene, I don't know if you know what Castle Rock is. It is the Stephen King's world. Mm-hmm. So Castle Rock, he always mentions Castle Rock in his books, but only 2 of his books took place there. So this is it's an anthology show, different stories every season. This is our 2nd season, and this is our final episode of the season that we're filming there. So what we do is we bring an army with us. It's about 120 people. What we bring is, I kind of divide it up into a base camp, which is our makeup trailers, our honey wagon, which is all of our offices, it's our costume trailer. We kind of put that away from everybody, kind of in a big lot. And then we bring our work trucks close to set. So what we do when we film in a residence is we will contact all the neighbors. We'll make sure they know. We like to buy driveways so we can put some of our work trucks in. We have a road scene, which would probably close the road or do what we call ITC, which is intermittent traffic control. And that will entail just, we do our scene, traffic is backed up, and then we let it go. So we will be prepping probably September 5th. It's a slow prep. It's a lot of set decoration. There's no explosion. There's no big action scene. There's nothing like that. It is a huge fight that is going to happen at this house and go into the docks and then into the water. So we're getting all, what we do is we usually go to the town hall and try to see if there's a permit process, and then we link up with police if we need the police. We use the support services of the town that we need. So we will contact everybody. We're going to start filming around September 16th. It is all day shots, so you're very lucky. We don't have big lights. We don't have lights in neighbors' houses, things like that. So most of our calls will be about 7 a.m. till 8 p.m. at night. It's the night that it goes to 9 p.m. We're filming 4 days in a row. And what we do is when we film that first night, we call it a walk away, is we put everything nice and neat and we can just walk, come back the next day. We have security guards. They watch our stuff, and then we do our thing the next day. So what I do is, I get what I need from the permits. Like we need to test water. We call it about the water of the lake that we have to give back to Warner Brothers, which is one of our production companies, for safety, since our actors will go in. So we'll deal with that. We might want to have some lake control for some scenes. We don't want to see boats cross our frame line, so we'll need the police for that. We'll need the police for the roads. And we'll be, like I said, dealing with the neighbors and stuff like that.
And whoever shows up.
Whoever shows up? Right. Yeah. Like you?
I work during the day.
You're all welcome to come down.
During the day. If it's during the day, probably not.
Heather saw one of our locations down in Clinton when we were filming. Showed her kind of the structure, our infrastructure, and how we run. We might want to get some catering. I think I have plans. We're going to try for potential catering at Shady Point Campground. I don't know if that's possible, but
private organization, so you could have to work.
We have to go with them. We try to find stuff close to our set, so we don't have to go too far. But we're pretty concentrated. It's a pretty good deal. We're not in the town center or anything like that. And like I said, it'll be the climax of our second season.
Right. The fight that goes in the water, I mean, how can you lose?
Yeah, so you'll hear screaming. And,
that's Thursday.
It's a pretty big fight. Lots of screaming, splashing around, grunts and groans, but that's kind of it.
Excellent. Any questions from the board?
So the scheduling starts, you said, on the 16th?
Yeah.
And how long do you expect it to go?
To the 19th.
So the week.
Yeah.
Well, setup's going to be before then, he said, so.
Setup will be before that. We'll start setting up September 5th. That's pretty small stuff until we get about 2 days before, and then we start setting up cable for the inside lighting, stuff around the house that we're using, things like that. We'll probably have support boats go out. We'll probably have camera boats go out onto the lake, and, that will film towards land, stuff like that, and the fight. The fight, they keep pushing each other in and out of water, so we'll have safety teams, jet skis, and we'll make sure. We have a marine coordinator who will talk with your guys and make sure we can, we have to have a lifeguard. There's a lot of OSHA things we need to do. So I'm in charge of getting all that together. So.
Any other questions?
And then wrap will probably be 2 days. So we'll play there Friday. We don't work weekends, and then Monday we'll clean up and be done.
All right. Overnight, you mentioned that there will be security guards. Will you be employing any additional lighting overnight?
Any additional?
Lighting?
No. Oh, no.
I know you mentioned day shooting, but...
Yeah, most of the, all the action, it all takes place during the day. We'll have light shining inside because we like to blow out some windows so we don't see neighbors' houses, things like that, because it kind of has to look secluded. So we'll have lights around the house so we can actually do day scenes at night. But like I said, most of our calls are, we work 12 hours a day. So if we work at 7 a.m., we're done with lunch. We're usually done at 8. And then that moves as the week goes on. So it might be an 8 PM call, but they're keeping it to 7 or 7:30. Depends on the director. Do we go over? Are they not getting the shot? Stuff like that.
Are you going to be employing generators?
Yes, we will have generators, lighting generators.
And roughly what time will those be on?
Probably 7 AM.
Okay, until you finish, what, 8 o'clock at night?
8:39, yeah.
Okay.
If it's a walkaway, things happen pretty fast. So it'll be the last night we're there Thursday. If we're done at 9, we might not be leaving the neighborhood till around 11.
Okay.
But we usually inform neighbors and stuff like that when, you know, what our times are and if we're going late.
Okay. Heather, what were your impressions during the trip to Clinton?
It was impressive, the amount that goes into the productions. But we went over, the police chief attended, the fire chief, and the land use director, so we could all, from our different perspectives, see what was needed and required of town operations. And it answered a lot of questions for us, and I think we're in a good place where all the needs of the police department, fire department, and for land use will be met.
So everybody's supportive of that we can accommodate this?
I
pretty
believe,
easily?
yes.
Okay. Doesn't sound like it's anything overboard, so pardon the pun.
The only thing I know about the show is I think Sissy Spacek was on it.
She was on the first season, yes. We have Tim Robbins on the second season.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Is he one of the people fighting?
He is not.
Oh.
It is our other lady. It is our. This is public knowledge, but it is the beginning of Annie Wilkes, who is the Misery, Kathy Bates in Misery.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's how she got to where she is. So that's one of our storylines. So that'll be. That's played by Lizzie Kaplan, and she'll be there.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Stand By Me, which takes place in Castle Rock. So I don't know the other one that you said there was
Needful
two.
Things.
Needful Things. Okay,
Needful
I did not know
Things
that.
in Castle Rock. Yes.
Excellent. Well, I don't think there's anything for us to vote on, right?
No, this was
I think it's
primarily
great.
an
I wish you
introduction.
the best of luck there. And
Well, thank you. Thanks for having us. And
will it say shot on location in Lunenburg, Mass. near the end of the credits?
Probably not. But on IMDb, people put that stuff. It's the Internet Movie Database, and they will say where it was filmed.
Okay.
Things, but a credit, they're very stingy with credits. So,
Yes, I can.
but good try. A for effort.
Hey, you try when you have the opportunity. What can I say? Well, I wish you good luck on the shoot, and I know that you're in good hands with the town manager and the land use director and the police and fire chiefs and everybody else you may need here.
So does that mean you've never had filming in Lunenburg? If you've never had,
But I'm
something?
aware.
Oh well.
Chief, have we ever had filming in Lunenburg?
No, I had a lot of requests, but
Yeah.
Well, I'm very
I mean, I
excited.
know this past fall, there was filming in Harvard. They were doing Little Women. And I wanted to get over there, and I couldn't because of work, too, so.
Well, I will make it a very good experience.
Excellent.
And I'm sure the Lake Shirley Corporation would appreciate a donation.
They have one already.
Well, I appreciate you coming forward here, and
Thank you for having me.
yeah,
Thank you for having us.
thank you. Thank you for choosing Lunenburg.
Sure.
All right.
Welcome to Lunenburg.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Joe.
Should be pretty exciting.
What?
We're ahead of schedule.
I know, now we're ahead of schedule.
Yeah, you know, one scene from.
Are you all set? All right, so we're going to take our 7:40 in advance here, and meeting with the police chief and the DPW director regarding amendments to the traffic rules and regulations. I see one half of the team at the microphone. Are you the lead on this, chief?
I'd just like to start off by saying that up to this point in my career, we haven't had the need for any production companies being in town because I have a front row seat to the greatest show on earth.
I'm not. Well played.
Anyways, I'm going to throw myself under the bus by admitting that in the last 40 years that I have never realized that these stop signs never existed. But anyways, I'm here to ask you to approve several stop signs that should be added to the code, to the traffic enforcement code. And if you want, I'll read those off to you. It's Elizabeth Street at Pierce Street for southbound traffic, Florence Street at Pierce Street for southbound traffic, Kirby Ave at Florence Street for westbound traffic, Clearing Street at Whalum Road for northbound traffic, Pierce Street at Clearing Street for westbound traffic, Clearing Street at Leisure Avenue for southbound traffic, Leisure Avenue at Leisure Avenue Extension for southbound traffic, Otis Street at Burke Street for northbound traffic, Hamlin Street at Burke Street for northbound traffic, and Natick Street at Burke Street for northbound traffic. And what I didn't add to this, and what I realized tonight when I was driving around there just reviewing this whole area, is that the Rogers Way at Whalum Road stop sign, which was erected after the project was built, was never codified, so we need to address that as well. And if you would like, if you approve these, I can add that to the list and just have the DPW director sign this request and send it off to you.
We can add it tonight, I think, right? I mean, it's part of our agenda item, and if you have a last-minute addition, then just let's add it.
Okay, but I guess what I meant is I can add it to this, to this document.
So basically, these 10 additions, and now with the one you just mentioned, 11 additions, are just basically listing, because they all have to be listed as accepted, stop signs that already exist, but we've never had them in the...
Actually, they never even existed for whatever reason. These are T intersections that never had stop signs.
Okay.
So, we want to obviously add them.
Oh, so they don't even have, it's not like they had stop signs, they weren't on the list, they didn't even have stop signs?
Didn't even have
All right,
stop signs.
So we're adding all these.
With the exception of Rogers Way, that was something I think that was done through planning, but it was never accepted as a, or never codified, so.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of them. How did that come to your attention?
Well, that's a great question. I have a really good answer for that.
Good.
No. Yeah, thank God, no, we didn't write any tickets that were rejected, but some residents from both the Clearing and Wallace Park came to see me because they, rightfully so, complained that the traffic on those little side streets has increased since a couple of years ago when they added the signalization at Route 13 and Whalum Road. And what happens is people they don't want to go through the intersection through the lights, so they cut through these back roads and they go flying down by Wallace Park and the Clearing and Leisure. And in addition to that, from what I'm told, is that traffic has increased even more now that the Rogers Way project is in there, because some people will cut through there to get to Rogers Way as well. So I told them that what I would do is that the DPW director and I would take a ride over there and see what, if anything, we could do. They were talking about making one-way, Pierce Ave one-way, possibly some other streets one-way. So DPW director and I went over there and drove around, and with the exception of the Clearing, I don't think Pierce Ave would, I don't think it'd be really a good idea to make it a one-way or even a do not enter. But what we did notice is that there's no signage on the intersections, and I think that would help calm the traffic situation. I think it might even discourage people from going that way if they have to stop at every intersection. That's like an unintended consequence of that, I would.
But these are neighborhoods, right? You don't want people screaming through neighborhoods.
No, and these are, as I said too, these are like T intersections, so they absolutely have to have stop signs. And I'm shocked that I've never noticed that in 40 years. I just mind-boggling that I never noticed it. But it's because of the extremely low traffic volume, I'm sure. It's not like, a street you're on every day, traveling at. 30,
Well, it's
30,
great that
40 miles.
the citizens, brought it to your attention.
Yeah, no, it is. And, I always say that. We rely heavily upon the citizens to bring these things to our attention. I can't think of everything. I'm only one person. And even though I've lived in this town all my life, which again, it's almost embarrassing for me to admit this, but it's true. I'm not going to, deny it. I can't think of everything.
Right, you can't think of everything.
The two things I'd like to mention while we're talking about this, because I'm probably going to be back up here in front of you talking about, or asking, is depending on how the people on the Clearing feel about it. The Clearing, as you know, is a very narrow street. It really only one car can pass. And it's been like that for 100 years. And I'm going to knock on doors down there and see how the residents of the clearing feel about making that a one-way, because I think it would benefit them. A one-way coming in from Whalen Road to keep cars from going off. It's a very blind exit onto Whalen Road, and off the top of my head, I don't remember how many, if any, accidents we've had there, but I think it'd be a good thing to prevent anything from happening. And not only that, it'll stop this. They pull, the complaint I get from some of them is they pull out of their driveway and a car's coming the other way, and they actually have to either pull back in the driveway or move way over onto somebody's lawn or something so that the other car can pass. So I think it's kind of ridiculous to leave it as a two-way, and I'm going to talk to them first. I think I'm just going to knock on doors. I want to get their feedback first before, we shouldn't get it anyway, but I'd like to do that. Another thing I'd like to do is now with where we accepted the new motor vehicle speed chapters at the town meeting last year. I'd like to make a safety zone in front of the town beach. That would bring the speed down to 20 miles an hour, and I'd like to probably do that at a couple of the areas, possibly Chestnut Street at Marshall Park and so forth. So that'll, I'm gonna probably be proposing in the very near future. It's just gonna take me some time to figure out.
Now, the area near the town beach, would it be all year 20 miles an hour, or just in the summer when the beach is active?
No, it would be all year, unfortunately, because that's, once you proclaim it a safety zone, then when we set the speed limit, that's it. But it would only be for that short distance. We could create the zone within, a short distance just to cover that area. And quite frankly, I think it would probably warrant it. There's a pretty sharp corner, and you have the intersection of Hollis Road and Prospect Street, which is a blind intersection, so, might serve to help reduce any kind of crashes at that area too.
Couldn't you introduce, like they do at school zones, that when the light is flashing, that's 20?
Yeah.
Like install a light?
Right. Well, no, install a light that says, like in front of school zones, that says when the light's flashing, the speed limit is 20, but otherwise it's not.
Yeah, I'd have to do some more research on that to see if maybe we put signage up to that effect so it doesn't reduce it for the entire year. But I honestly, off the top of my head, having done some research in the past, I don't remember them giving you that option.
Okay.
I think once you make it a safety zone, and it specifically says in the law it's for parks and recreational areas like that, then it's set. And even though that's a seasonal thing,
If you can look into it if it's possible,
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I will. I know where you're going. I understand where you're going with that. Believe me. But
Yeah, because then if it's really only needed in the summer, people are going to tend to ignore it.
In the winter.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then it'll be less valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good point. But at any
Because you can't, we only have so many cops on duty. They're not going to be there
They're not gonna be
tagging
there,
people.
Right, to enforce it, yeah.
Are there a lot of accidents in that area?
Of the town beach? I wouldn't say a lot, there's been some. We actually had a guy drive through the fence last year. Last year?
What's that?
The guy drove through the fence last year down the town beach?
As soon as it was repaired, yeah.
Yeah, it was brand new when he drove through it.
Awful.
Like the same day, wasn't it, or the next day?
After.
Yeah. So, parked car accidents, I remember having a few of those. I'm sure there's not a lot, otherwise I'd probably have a better recollection of it, but we've had a few down there. We had a pedestrian hit by a car down by there at one point, several years ago.
In my younger years, I would go rather fast down there, so I understand.
Yeah, I would admit to that myself.
He remembers that.
No, I don't remember you, I remember me. So, anyways.
Well, that sounds good. We need a motion to accept these?
Yes.
And are we going to include the other additional one at the same time?
Rogers Way.
Rogers Way at?
At Whalen Road, and that would be northbound traffic. Rogers Way at Whalen Road northbound.
I would entertain a motion regarding the traffic regulations and the additional stop signs that the police chief has just gave us the list for, including the one he just gave verbally.
I move we approve the stop sign locations as submitted to us.
Second?
Any further discussion?
Yes. I know that you enforce the law indiscriminate of where people live. I would ask that you would give a little bit of leeway to the residents who are used to driving these streets just to get used to the stop signs for maybe the first 2 weeks or so.
Oh, yeah, no, we would do that. Absolutely, yeah, that's, we've always done that. I'd like to think my guys use a lot of discretion when it comes to those things.
Because Michael's still tooling around back there.
I have a good stop sign joke, don't I, Jack? But we won't share that here.
I know you're biting your tongue, too.
Oh, I am. So I'll provide you with
Amended
an
letter.
amended document tomorrow, and I'll have Jack sign it, so you'll have it for your records.
Okay.
Any
Thank you.
other discussion from the board?
Nope, thank you very much for
Thank you for all the work
taking
both
care
of
of
you
this.
done.
Well, thank
I would-
you very much for yours.
All those in favor of the motion to approve all the stop signs as listed by the police chief, including the extra one at Rogers Way at Whalen Road, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None.
Thank you.
We're a very agreeable board tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, I might stick around. I don't know.
What else do you need?
Yeah.
All right, now officially way ahead of schedule. Do we have to wait for the earth permits, or do we have people coming in?
We do have, they were invited to
All
attend.
right, so we'll put that off. Article 8. You want to do your town manager report?
I can do that.
Okay.
First item on my report is about an advisory that was issued by Neshoba Associated Board of Health and information about the Central Mass Mosquito Control Program. So the Neshoba Associated Board of Health has issued a community advisory that has been posted to the town website and on the town Facebook page. The Mass Department of Public Health has tested and identified mosquitoes infected with Eastern equine encephalitis in the towns of Bolton, Harvard, and Shirley, and West Nile virus in Littleton and Leominster. There have been no mosquitoes in Lunenburg that have tested positive for triple E or West Nile virus. Lunenburg residents can contact Central Mass Mosquito Control at 508-393-3055 or by visiting their website at cmmcp.org to request their property be sprayed. The Neshoba Associated Board of Health advises the public take all the necessary precautions, such as protective clothing, applying insect repellent, and being aware of peak mosquito hours during dusk to dawn. The school has made a request to treat the school grounds on or about the athletic fields at the Lunenburg Middle High School for Monday, September 9th. The product being used is Zenovex. The schools, as part of their requirement, will be providing notice to employees, pupils, and parents at least 2 working days prior to the spraying. The treatment will occur after sundown and before midnight on September 9th, weather permitting. I will be working with the DPW director and the Parks Commission about spraying on town fields. Central Mass Mosquito Control also has a tire collection program where they come and collect tires that are scheduled to be picked up at the curb. This can be done by requesting the service through their website, cmmcp.org, or calling 508-393-3055. Tire recycling is aimed to eliminate mosquito larval habitats and reduce the risk from mosquito-borne diseases. There is no additional cost to residents or municipalities that are a member of Central Mass Mosquito Control, and certain restrictions apply.
So there's no cost for the spraying either, right?
Correct.
I'm so glad we belong to that.
Yes. Great service. Announcement on existing vacancies. The following is a list of vacancies on the following committees. Agricultural Commission, 1 regular member and 3 alternate vacancies. 1 vacancy on the Americans with Disabilities Act Commission. 1 design professional, craftsperson, or building contractor familiar with historic renovation on the Architectural Preservation District Commission. 1 position appointed by the Finance Committee Appointing Committee for the Finance Committee. one elected position that will be a joint appointment with the remaining Housing Authority members and the Selectmen for the Housing Authority, one elected position that will be a joint appointment with the remaining Planning Board members and the Selectmen for the Planning Board, and one regular member and 2 associate vacancies for the Zoning Board of Appeals. And talent bank forms can be obtained on the town website and forwarded to the Board of Selectmen's office. An update on the Summer Street Road reconstruction project. Concrete sidewalks and driveways have been completed in the Lunenburg section of the project. All driveways have been paved and loam has been placed in the Lunenburg section as well. It is anticipated that seeding of all the loamed areas will occur in the next couple of weeks. Concrete sidewalk and driveway installation is in progress in the Leominster section of the project. All the concrete sidewalk work, excluding Baker's Brook Bridge, is expected to be complete by the end of September. Paving of the final course is scheduled for mid-October. The contractor anticipates having most of the contract work complete by the end of the construction season this year. They will most likely be back in the spring to complete the punch list items. An update on the Recycling IQ Kit grant. I held interviews today for the 4 grant-funded positions under the Recycling IQ Kit grant. We had approximately 30 applications with a good pool of applicants to choose from. Selection of 4 candidates will be done this week. The magnetic postcards advertising recyclable items were sent out to residents last week, and we received 2 of the 4 signboards last week. And one is at the intersection outside the Ritter Building, the other at the DPW building. We will be putting up 2 more signboards and 2 banners in the near future.
That's amazing that you got so many applicants.
It is. I was happy about that. 'Cause, just speaking with the other towns that have been through this process, that was the hardest part of the
You'd think so.
the grant process.
The magic touch.
ADA Public Rights of Way Self-Evaluation and Transition Plan. Stantec, the engineering firm that was selected through an RFP process by Montechusett Regional Planning Commission to perform a self-evaluation and create a transition plan for 3 of its member communities' public rights of way, has nearly completed a draft self-evaluation report. We'll be scheduling a meeting to receive an update on the self-evaluation report for the week of September 15th, which the selectmen are also invited to attend. Unitil's Storm Resiliency Program, I can cover this now or when we go into that agenda topic.
Well, or both.
Okay. Unitil has provided additional information that has been requested by both the Planning Board and the Selectmen, which was forwarded by the Land Use Director. In that correspondence, there were a number of dates for a site walk that the board will need to request their preferred date. I'm working on getting a price from a third-party arborist to review the list of public trees that Unitil has included in the Storm Resiliency Program to be either trimmed or removed. The private trees are not under the jurisdiction of the Planning Board or the Board of Selectmen.
So even if they're on the scenic way, if they're on private land,
Correct. Other announcements, Town Council and I are in the process of scheduling a training for open meeting law, conflict of interest, and public records law. I hope to have 1 evening training for elected and appointed board members and 1 day training for staff. So as soon as this date is scheduled, I will be sending out that information via the town-wide serve list.
Excellent. Any questions for the town manager on her report?
nope, thank you for the update.
Okay. So we have another 15 minutes, so let's say we have a segue here into the discussion about Unitil Storm Resiliency Program. So the most important thing from what the town manager just read is we have to choose a date to go on this walk to review the trees that are being listed so that we can discuss them, everybody can see them. We'll have to post that meeting, obviously. But then we'll be prepared for the continuance of the public hearing that was continued at the planning board meeting several weeks ago.
During that walk, will we, I know that when DPW Director Roddickens went out with Unitil and then with a local tree person, there were some trees they identified as needing to go because they were injured, sick, and some trees that were on the list that were healthy. And I won't necessarily know which ones are healthy and which aren't, so will we have some indication of which ones?
Well, I'm hoping the DPW director is going to be on that guided walk of all the trees.
Okay,
That would
great.
make sense, so he can share with us which ones.
Okay, great. Thank you.
When do we need to get, what are the days that they're proposing?
So obviously it's not going to happen tomorrow, September 4th. Friday, September 6th, another date. Tuesday, September 17th. Wednesday, September 18th. Thursday, September 19th, after 2 p.m. and before 6 p.m.
Can we, everybody on this board, can we do this before our meeting next week? Can we do it a 6 to 6:45 walk?
Oh, which day?
The 17th? No, the 10th wasn't one of the days.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So that before ours,
The 17th.
yeah, before on the 17th then.
You said meet at what time?
Thinking about,
Probably 6.
6 o'clock, do 6 to 6:45.
I can do that.
Now, that doesn't interfere with that ADA thing with that, there was a couple of choices on that day, but
Yeah,
it's
well-
before that, right?
I think so.
I thought you said before 6, though, is what they were looking for.
No, starting at 6.
Yes.
6 to 6:45, before this meeting.
Oh, sorry. Those are, with those times, it's 9 a.m. to 6, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
We have to be at 5 to 6.
Can they move it to 6? I mean, do they have another hour? Can we ask?
Can we move it at 5:30 to 6:30? Is that possible? I mean, I work, so, for me to get,
Well, now, there was a September 6th, that's very soon, isn't it?
Yeah, I can certainly ask them. I can't speak for them. I expect that that's their contractual working time. So there may be some wrangling to be done on their end. But, I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask. And I think the intent is to do one walk with both groups.
right.
So, and then I think later obviously works for all folks who work during the day. So I can certainly inquire about 5:30 to 6:30. I will say the planning board did a truncated walk with them prior to their first introduction to the planning board. And it was close to an hour long, and we got less than a quarter of the trees done in that walk. We essentially walked from the Ritter Building to the end of the Common and back to the Ritter Building. And looking at the trees took about an hour.
Took an hour.
About.
32 trees.
No, we only looked at the Common. We looked at about 8 trees. So what I'm saying is that this could be and some of it was
Could be a
new.
picnic lunch is what you're saying.
Some of it was new information. They didn't have the data sheets that we now have. There wasn't as much information. So questions can be a little bit more pointed. There was a lot of, this tree is this, and this is why we're looking at it, and some of that. And I would personally recommend that the week before, and since we're not doing it on the 24th, but the week of the 17th, it would be fresher in your mind for when you see it again. And you won't need to post per open meeting law if there's no deliberation. If it's just a site walk and you're just gathering information, it's not a meeting, even if there is a quorum.
I think we should always post whenever we meet.
But I mean, that's a choice the board can make on their own. It's not required.
So what is the best way to get this planned? We have to coordinate with the planning board and Unitil and the DPW director and the Board of Selectmen.
Correct.
Anybody else?
And me.
Now, I have a question. Is the public welcome on this walk? Someone asked.
Not
me
that, they can tail along, but I'm not going to entertain questions. We already have, two full baseball teams going on. this
Yeah,
thing,
no,
so-
but I mean, I was asked by a resident if
They can,
public
I
was
don't
invited.
care if they come, they're just not going to ask questions. I'm not going to entertain questions.
And it's a.
Because they're going to
it's-
have enough questions from the people who are making the decision.
Correct. And it will
And
be,
we're going
it
to
will
bring it
be on
back to our
public
individual
property.
boards too, so.
It will be on public property, so we can't bar them from being on public
And
property.
that's okay. I mean, they're welcome. And, another thing was that this person really supported the Board of Selectmen's position. And I said, geez, you know, we've only gotten a couple emails, but they haven't been in support. She goes, what happens is, when people support you, they go, they got it this, so we're not going to bother to weigh in. So you really just hear from people who say no, not from the people who support you.
Right.
But there are people
I don't
out
even
there
know that
supporting you.
we haven't taken a position to support or not support. So when I hear people taking that position, I'm like, really? I didn't know that we just supported getting more data from Unitil and going on the walk.
Right.
So your hope is 5:30 on the 17th?
That would be, yeah, because if we could do that before our meeting.
Sure. I will reach out and inquire, and I'll...
Anytime after 5 o'clock or 5:15 on any of those days will work for me.
Okay.
Doing it before then gets to be more difficult.
I think we gotta, for me, it has to be a little closer to 6. 5:30 is about the earliest.
Drop dead.
Yeah, so,
I'll inquire with them about what their availability is after that.
all right, so then you'll communicate with the town manager. Excellent.
They must have gotten that question before.
7 a.m. So
That's easier for me.
Yeah, I guess that is an option. I mean, I'm not a good option for me because I'll be seeing 3 trees for every one, but I mean, if somebody has a 7 or 7:30, I can probably do that too, so.
Yep, I could too.
All right, that's all about the Unitil, right? We have all the data we need from them. Everybody should have received that. It's on our Google Drive.
Yeah, and just to further that announcement, if there's any public input about a position, if you're pro or against the removal of the trees, we invite public comment in writing. So either through
Yes.
email or handwritten, submitted to the Board of Selectmen's office.
I'm just going to touch on town manager annual evaluation process because, again, like last week, we didn't, or 2 weeks ago, we didn't have a full board. We don't have a full board tonight, so we're not going to be voting on that. So this will be tabled until next week when we have, hopefully when we have a full board. So that's item number 3. We still have 7 minutes here. Do you want to talk about the
I think we
special?
may have everybody here for the earth.
Do you have everybody here for the earth removal? Adam, do you have everybody who was invited and expected here?
I believe so.
Okay, well, let's go to the earth removal then. Earth removal permit renewals.
So, back again. How do you want to handle this? Do you want to go down the list of earth removal permits? Do you want to ask questions?
Well, right now, we have nothing to ask questions of.
Okay.
So why don't you
We have the
introduce
letter.
them?
Okay,
We have
so-
the letter, right?
You should have a couple of memos from me.
Yep.
One on, well, we'll start with Keating since I think they're the only ones who will be here. So there are 1, 2,
That's your memo, August 29th, right?
correct. 5, 6, 7. There are 7 permits currently open.
So let's take them in the order of your memo.
Sure, for PJ Keating Corporation. They've asked that 6 of those 7 be renewed, if I'm not mistaken. With number 19, they're asking it to not be renewed because it
Well, in
is
your memo,
covered
it
under
says
19
15.
says you're advising that it be renewed.
Correct, but in reviewing it, it's also covered under permit 15. So the PJ Keating Corporation has asked that 19 not be renewed, correct me if I'm wrong, because it is covered under 15. They're
So 19 is the new 15.
correct.
Okay.
Or 15,
15 is the new
15,
19.
8, 19 is really what it comes down to. So 15
But,
is,
you know, when you talk about 19,
Okay, we're not talking about 19. Let's
all
talk
right.
about 15.
so permit 15, per the way that it is written, and I must have misread it in looking at it, but it covers the the west side of Reservoir Road, north and south of the B&M Railroad, exclusive of the office building, which PJ Keating has on the corner of Leominster Shirley Road and Reservoir Road. The majority of the earth removal happening on this is north of the B&M Railroad. The area south is their scale yard and material storage, but there is a significant amount of material to the east of that property that in the future could and probably will be removed. The area north of the B&M Railroad on the west side of Reservoir Road was an area that had some issues the last time you renewed. There was an area within the 250-foot setback from Reservoir Road that in the late 90s, early aughts had been encroached upon and removed. It hadn't been touched for several decades, but it also had not been reclaimed. PJ Keating was required to install permanent monuments noting the 250-foot buffer. Those have been installed. They have been viewed by myself. In addition, there is a requirement in the permit that all grades on the site be 15% or lower, and that all inactive areas be stabilized with vegetation. The grading has been done. There was hydroseed laid on the grades. It has not taken. It was laid in early to mid-August, and it's just time that kind of bakes hydroseed. It doesn't give it a chance to really take. But a lot of work was done in that area over that time, and you'll notice if you look out behind me, you won't recognize anybody who was here last year at this time re-permitting earth removal. There's been some shake-up in the environmental and management section of PJ Keating, so I'm recommending that the board approve and renew the permit with a condition that by April of 2020, the vegetation be stabilized, and that is to allow the new team time to get their vegetation in. They've been cooperative. Commissioner Rhodes and I met with them back in early July. We identified a couple of issues. They were quick to get on those and take them up. So that permit is one that I think that simple condition should cover.
So when did the new team come into play?
My understanding is that between March and May or so.
The vegetation and grade requirement and all that, they had time to do that.
Well, they did, but as with anybody who starts a new job, there are the filling in period, there's the catching up on what wasn't done, and there's your boss's priorities. At the time that we visited in July, the slope had not been regraded. The permanent monuments were in place, but the grading had not been done. And it was a significant grade change. It was probably somewhere in the 40-degree range, so the work to pull it out to 15 is not a small task to repurpose people for. Again, they were responsive. They did it within a month or so of being requested to do it, and at that time they did go through the trouble and expense of laying hydroseed, unfortunately outside of growing season, and that is something that this time hasn't taken.
So if we renew it, how long will it be renewed until?
Would be renewed for 1 year. That's what the current bylaw says. So, and the condition, you know, if they fail to meet the condition of stabilizing by April, then you would have the opportunity to enforce that. The reality is,
but not till August.
You could do an inspection in April, and if you felt that they were in violation of your condition, you could take action.
I'd prefer that.
You want to take action if something hasn't happened yet?
No, I mean, I would like to plan an inspection in April, and if it hasn't been done, take action.
And again, I mean, there's 2 growing seasons between now and April. There's the fall growing season, which hydroseed in late September, mid-October will generally start to germinate and take, and will be substantially stabilized by spring. And that's what I'm recommending, is that through April you allow them the opportunity to stabilize.
Sorry, if I may, I'm Doug Vigno.
No, at the mic. Yes, thank you.
Doug Vigno, PJ Keating, Environmental Compliance Manager, and I did take a photo today, and it is taking.
It is taking.
Yeah.
Look at that.
So if we inspect this at April 2020, there's going to be vegetation there?
There sure
There's
is.
already vegetation
Okay.
there. Young vegetation, but
Okay. Well, it's got to stay, it's got to hold through the winter.
gotta stabilize.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to make sure, because the land use director was speaking about the condition. I want to make sure that you're okay with the condition.
Yes, we are, and the work has been completed, and it looks pretty good. I can pass the picture around.
No, I believe you.
Okay, thank you.
Doug was very gracious 2 weeks ago, and I did a site visit for all the different areas that are before us tonight for this earth removal permit, and it's pretty, from what I could tell, it's pretty clear that they are aggressively, in my opinion, aggressively trying to get up to speed here, that their new team that's in place is certainly taking this serious. And we could see when I was there that there was a substantial amount of, you can tell earth has been recently moved. There's a substantial amount of work that's been done in the last couple of months.
Well, the property is very close to Lake Shirley, and so environmental compliance is of the utmost importance.
They had really good markers up that were beyond 250 feet, just so that it was kind of, they gave themselves almost like a 300-foot buffer rather than a 250, and that was really noticeable throughout their property as well.
I like that. Thank you.
I'm assuming, by the way, Mr. Burney, that when our new building commissioner comes on, that you will take him on sites and acquaint him.
I can't wait.
What?
I said I can't wait.
I'm sure that's true. So should we take these individually? Let's take these individually. I won't make it a question. So I will entertain a motion on permit 15, given the conditions and the report of the land use director that was just given.
Yeah. We renew earth removal permit 15 for PJ Keating with the condition that vegetation be substantially established no later than April 2020.
And the permit will expire?
In August 31st.
August 31st of 2020.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yes. What are you thinking of in April as far as date goes? Could we put a more specific date on April? April.
I would say the end of April.
End of April.
Is
How about
what
that?
something like that would mean to me.
That sounds reasonable.
Amend my motion to the end of April.
Do I have a second, or amended second?
I amend my second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Permit 16.
Permit 16. This covers the east side of Reservoir Road from Leominster Shirley Road north. This area is the one that last spring was identified as estimated priority habitat, or priority and estimated habitat, under the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife and the Endangered Species Act. The applicant was required to confer with the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife to identify if they could reclaim the areas that were no longer being excavated within the priority habitat, and then to identify how they would do so. There should be a letter in your drive that was sent to the town and PJ Keating Corporation from the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, indicating that the blanding turtle would survive and be okay to nest and continue to work in that area if it were hydroseeded. That came in July, so I don't believe that there was any work done to finalize that. And again, that would be a condition that I would recommend that you carry forward. Almost more importantly, or more to the point, the area south of the B&M Railroad is substantially comprised of the asphalt and rock crushing plant that PJ Keating Corporation operates. This is not an earth removal area, it's an industrial activity in a properly zoned parcel. So my recommendation is that you do renew the permit with the condition that that PJ Keating provide a plan prior to the permit renewal in 2020 that outlines the areas that are not part of earth removal. There is a large area to the east of their plant on Leominster Shirley Road that appears to be vacant land that may or may not have material that they may or may not wish to continue excavating from. I don't think it's my place to tell them where their material is, but with the work that we've been doing over the years to consolidate permit numbers and properly assign them to parcels, I think it's important that they also outline the areas that are outside of priority habitat and outside of their 250-foot buffer, and that are outside of their crushing plant that they do wish to continue to remove from. This is not a quick or easy task, and now having an answer from Fish and Wildlife, giving them a year to identify the places and the extent of where they would remove, I think is a reasonable condition and something that they're probably doing on a rolling basis anyway to know what they have coming forward.
So my question to you is, your memo to this board, to myself and this board, said that you think it should be, you recommended that the area be removed from the permit. Now you're here saying you wish we should, your recommendation is that we continue the permit.
Well, it does say I recommend that it be removed, but I think that they need to identify what that area is. So the recommendation is that it be removed, but that PJ...
Not the whole site, just
not the whole site, just the areas that are in the priority habitat, the areas that are currently used for the rock crushing plant. But I think it's imperative that PJ Keating present the areas that they feel there is still material that they can viably remove, rather than have it imposed upon them.
So do they need a year to identify the area?
I would defer to them. I think.
Do you need a year to identify the area where this landing turtle is?
Well, no, but I think that there are areas outside of that may or may not have viable material. And if they don't have material, there's no need for them to be included in the permit, but we don't know that without some...
Which is, you're asking for an area to be removed?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm asking, will that take a year? Do we have to approve can we, just like with the previous permit, can we have a check-in point where you identify the area before then? How long is it going to take to identify the area?
Sure, we can certainly do that. Won't take any more than a month to do that.
So what date do you feel comfortable with that you'll have an area identified for us?
We have a plan that's been, that we have.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, just for the people at home, because it's a public meeting, you were just, no problem.
So we have previously identified the areas for those parcels. Like Adam had indicated, the majority of it is really under the crushing plant in those areas and whatnot. On the opposite side is a far distance from where we're quarrying now. I don't know that there are any specific plans in the near future to do anything in that location, but would like to hold on to the permit.
Sure.
In the case that 20 years from now, 25 years from now, we'll keep coming back and hopefully get these permits renewed, but there's no plans at this time to do that. But we can provide a plan to you that shows our preliminary expectations for that particular permit.
When?
Within a month.
Okay. How about we just say by the end of this year? So by December 31st of 2019, they'll have identified that area.
To be removed from the permit.
The area to be removed from the permit according to the priority and estimated habitat that has to be removed.
And I have a question. I know they said, well, you would like to keep it in the permit in case in 25 years we want to remove earth. How hard is it to get an earth removal permit? Can't you close it now and in 25 years apply for a new permit? I mean, that seems like a very long time.
We don't know what the board makeup will be in 25 years. We don't know what the plans will be at that time. We'd like just as soon keep the earth removal permit open. We're not actively planning on doing any work up there now. But, commonly, if you have a permit, if you don't, you like to hold on to them as long as you can. This is my understanding, and Adam, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the Natural Heritage didn't have a problem with the work as proposed.
Correct.
And as Steve Mullaney from Mullaney Engineering provided a plan to Natural Heritage, and I don't know if you got a copy of that, you did as well, that provided plans for that location. So that's what the Natural Heritage Program approved, and said they had no problem with what our plans were for that location, and that hasn't changed. So it's not,
But I mean,
it's
you know,
not directly related to natural heritage.
Right, no, but there are areas you don't plan to remove earth from, so why not get those out of the permit? I mean, like, it's a very ecologically sensitive area. I'm not in favor of removing earth from any more than you have to, personally.
Yeah, if we can put it on to December 31st, you'll have the plan,
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
And I just want to be clear, that's the plan just for the priority and estimated habitat?
Right.
Okay. And I'm also recommending that the areas where the rock crushing plant be removed. But I But I understand that there's areas adjacent to the rock crushing plant that may or may not hold material, and that also, I think, needs to be outlined, and that was part of what I was recommending.
And we're going to go with your recommendation, but that can wait till the end of the permit year.
Correct, yes.
The habitat, I'd like to get situated early.
Sure.
Any questions from the board? I'd entertain a motion then on permit number 16.
I'm going to try to get this right.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So move we renew earth removal permit 16 for PJ Keating, with the condition that by the end of this year, they outline areas to be removed from the permit according to the priority and estimated habitat region, and before the 2020 renewal, they submit a plan to remove all other areas where they do not anticipate removing earth.
That was perfect.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Okay.
I abstain.
All right, we have 3-0 and 1 abstention. Permit 17, 27, and 30.
All right, so there's a typo in my memo. This is actually the east side of Fort Pond Road.
Okay.
This is the area with the recycling plant, the repair garage, et cetera. There is a substantial amount of land there. There's a substantial amount of material. My recommendation that this permit be renewed.
Renewed. I'd entertain a motion on, well, first of all, any questions? I would entertain a motion on permits 17, 27, and 30.
Move we renew permits 17, 27, and 30 for PJ Keating.
Have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
You know, again, this is, if they're not removing material, and they've got recycling, equipment repair garage, and equipment storage area, why do they need to keep the earth removal permits?
Well, it says material exists which may be removed. That's the last sentence. Right here.
Yeah, I know,
So-
but it's, I don't know.
Well, I'm not here to dictate their business. I mean, they're in the gravel and all those businesses of earth removal, so. Any further discussion? All those in favor of renewing the permits, in favor of the motion of renewing the permits 17, 27, and 30, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Nay.
Passes 3-1. Permit 19.
My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the applicant has requested that permit 19 not be renewed due to the fact that the land is covered under permit 15.
Okay, for the purpose of this, can one of you come to the microphone and actually state that you agree with that, just so we have that on record?
So, again, Doug Vigno, PJ Keating. On the permit number 19 application, we indicated that permit number 19 parcel is covered under permit 15, and that there is no request for a new permit number 19 or a renewal of permit number 19. That's on the application.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'd entertain a motion on permit 19.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
This was not found in any of our meeting minutes regarding permit 19.
Yeah, and that was my understanding, is that that there was a permit north of the railroad and south of the railroad. So that would be was my only pause, which was why
Which is what, that doesn't currently exist, a permit 19?
No,
But it wasn't previously combined under 15.
Correct. 15 doesn't stretch north and south, that 19 is south and 15 is north, but I was informed today that the applicant was requesting to not renew it, and that...
Okay, so in the worst case, if we renew it and it's overlapped, then there's nothing, no harm, no foul.
Correct.
If we deny it and then it's not combined, then they've lost the site.
That's correct.
Okay, and there's no determination that we have after, how long have these permits been around?
Well, there was a substantial effort over the last 2 years to identify the permit numbers and where they were attached to, and that's where 19 was attached to the area south of the railroad. So
I will ask Mr. Vinio, if you are okay with us, we're going to follow the recommendation of the land use director of closing this 19 permit, not renewing it.
When Commissioner Rhodes was here, he was with Adam and myself and Rob Robinson, who's the VP of Aggregate, and we discussed this. He, in fact, indicated that we should not even file a permit application for number 19. And then I got a call from the town manager's assistant that said would rather have it closed out formally for 19 because it is covered under another permit.
Okay. If you are okay with us closing it, then we are going to close it. Well, I think. We'll know in about 30 seconds.
I only work here.
I know. Okay. I will, yes.
We've been assured by Commissioner Rose and our discussions with Adam that it's covered under another permit. So it's a matter of consolidation of numbers.
Right, somewhere these permits are defined, one would presume. The worst case, then you'd have to extend next year to, I mean, in the worst case, if that turns out not to be true, and I have no idea because I haven't looked at the bounds that are on each of these grounds, the worst that would happen is you'd have to reapply for that if there's no overlap.
Thank you. Stephen, do you have anything to add? Sure. He's got a longer history with it than I.
Good evening. The language of permit...
Your name, please?
Stephen Mullaney from S.J. Mullaney Engineering, yes. A consultant for P.J. Keating Company. The language of permit 15 describes the permit as being on the westerly side of Reservoir Road and on both sides of the railroad, north and south. Permit 19, we understand, was the westerly side of Reservoir Road and just south of the railroad. So as Doug mentioned and as Adam mentioned, the area of permit 19 is a portion of what is also the area of permit 15. So we're confident that by not renewing permit 19, we still have permit coverage over all of the land that PJ Keating needs a permit on.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. So did I entertain a motion yet?
Not yet.
No. Okay, now I will.
So move we accept the closure of permit 19 for PJ Keating.
Second.
Now, is there any need for a closure plan?
No, because that area is open under
because
15.
it's still active. It's just that permit is not being renewed. So really, it's not a closure. It's the permit is not being renewed.
Correct.
Okay.
Because the permit is covered under another permit. Do I have a second for that motion?
Yeah, second.
And any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. And permit 57.
And that is the quarry adjacent land and the small little bit of quarry that is on the corner of Fort Pond Road and Leominster Shirley Road, south of Leominster Shirley Road and west of Fort Pond Road. The only requirement...
It says east of Fort Pond.
And again, typo. Okay. I flipped 17, 27, and 30, and
That's
57.
Okay. All right.
There was
Must have been quite acrobatic.
There was a requirement to install permanent monuments at the 100-foot buffer. I viewed a couple of them, not all of them, because it's a thick trek through the woods. And there is a gas easement that's 50 feet wide, about 50 feet off of the road for the most part. So you can identify whereabouts that 100 feet is. I did see at least 3 signs that were in that area. So having seen the work that Doug has done at the other sites, I am confident that he placed the signs all the way through, and I'm recommending that that permit be renewed as well.
I entertain a motion on permit 57.
Make a motion, we approve the renewal of permit 57 for PJ Keating.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Excellent. Thank you all for coming back and revisiting this with us, and for your continued cooperation in that.
All right, so you have 2 more permits.
Yes.
One for Powell down at 151-181 Leominster Shirley Road. This permit was a retroactive permit for removal that had been done previously. You've been waiting to approve the closure plan. The closure plan is an approved site plan by the planning board that was approved, I'm going to take a stab and say 13 May 2019. And that includes the area at the rear of the parcel to be used as a material storage and distribution yard in conjunction with the business that Powell runs. This is just the storage of non-native material that's brought in and brought back out. It is not the removal of earth, it is the moving of product, for lack of a better term. So I'm recommending that the board approve that closure plan and close that permit.
Any questions from members of the board? I entertain a motion on permit number 56 that was just described.
I move we accept the closure plan for permit 56 for Powell Stone and Gravel and not renew the permit.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those,
Assuming Powell Stone and Gravel is fine with that?
Yes. My understanding is they requested the closure.
okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None.
And the final permit is the Lunenburg Water District. They pulled an earth removal permit to begin prepping their site at 496 Mass Ave. Prior to the issuance of their building permit, I think this was mostly due to the nature of the district's structure and how they are able to hire designers and pull permits. It takes a little bit longer than a corporation, so they pulled the earth removal permit to cover themselves to avoid not falling within the exemption. My understanding is they've asked to not renew the permit because it's no longer necessary. They fall into the exemption. They've been granted a building permit, and the remaining removal is for removal to comply with the construction of their new office and garage facility in conjunction with a plan approved by the planning board for under site plan approval and under the building permit that they currently hold. So my recommendation would be to accept their closure plan of the approved site plan approval from the planning board and close the permit.
Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Excellent.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Bernie.
thank you very much for navigating us through those very tricky permits.
Thank you, Adam.
No reason why we can't start early, right? At 8:30?
I don't see why not for the
Okay.
hearing process.
Okay, at 8:30, a little bit early here, meeting with the Lake Shirley Improvement Corporation's aquatic ecologists regarding a new notice of intent filing and approval from Board of Selectmen to file notice of intent application.
Good evening, Joanna Bellata, 362 Sunset Lane, Lunenburg, Mass., here on behalf of Lake Shirley Improvement Corporation. And I would like to introduce to my right, Wendy Generand, and she is an aquatic ecologist and owner of Aquatic Restoration Consultant, LCC. She is a certified lake manager and has been actively assessing, managing, and protecting lakes and other aquatic environments for over 23 years. She specializes in habitat assessment and water quality. And Lake Shirley Improvement Corporation Corporation hired Wendy to create our new notice of intent that we had filed with the Conservation effective, I believe, Monday of last week. 300 certified mailings went out to the residents, as well as all the town of Shirley and the town of Lunenburg, because we're filing with both communities. So I will let Wendy speak, try to take personalities out of it, and let's talk about the science. And thank you.
This is the wrong group to be talking with the science about, but okay.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Again, like Joanna said, I'm here to represent the Lake Shirley Improvement Court and the application for a continued, although it's a new application, but for the continued control of invasive and aggressive native plant species through the use of winter water level drawdown and herbicides, as well as algicide application should conditions represent the threat of a bloom. They've been employing this technique for several years now. They've had several other consultants, Water Resources Services, also do an independent evaluation. I know Geosyntec has been involved from the beginning. So I'm here to answer any questions you have regarding the NOI in front of you, and hoping that the town agrees and as the landowner and signs the Wetland Protection Act forms. Proceed with the Conservation Commission meeting this month.
Sure. So before we start, I just want to say for everybody following this, so in quick review, it has been determined, not necessarily by deed, but by lack of ability to determine otherwise, that the town of Lunenburg owns the lake, and that LSIC, acting on behalf of residents who live on Lake Shirley, have asked for, as the owner, they can't apply directly, they need the permission of the town to apply to the Conservation Commission for this notice of intent. Our role in this is not evaluating necessarily the science of it, that is the role of the Conservation Commission. So our role tonight is to see if it's in order, it was received in time, we have the document in front of us, and our approval tonight does not necessarily substantiate anything in there or not, just that it has our blessing to go to the Conservation Commission. That is the way we're approaching this, unless somebody has ideas otherwise.
I would like to read into the record an email the BOS received from the Conservation Commission Chair and the Conservation Commission agent today.
Well, before you do that, let me ask one question.
Yes.
On the 27th of August, the town manager reached out to the president of the LSIC, saying, just reminding them that this was, that needed to be filed, just a reminder. And with the commission, Conservation Commission, they identified 7 bullet items, and the question I have for you, those 7 items were that the plan, the notice of intent, should include water quality tracking data, weed control thresholds and targets, drawdown goals and planning, plan to address native weed decline, plans for fanwort, alternatives to chemical treatments, and long-range goals. So my question, just from the town's point of view, do you believe that those 7 items were addressed in this application?
I know for a fact some of them have, but can you read them off one more time?
Water quality tracking data.
Yes, that's in here.
Weed control thresholds and targets.
Actual numbers, but targeting certain growths, yes. But actual numbers, I don't think they put a quantitative number on X%.
Okay. Drawdown goals and planning.
There is a drawdown depth, and there's evidence or data that's referenced in here that shows the past drawdown rates, which would be followed in the future.
Okay. Plan to address native weed decline.
There is a nature set-aside zones of no treatment areas, so those would preserve any native plants that are in that area.
So that sounds like a qualified yes.
Qualified, yes.
Okay. Plans for fanwort.
Specifically for Fanworth, there is a potential application for Clipper being asked, but it would be on a case-by-case basis if funds allow.
Okay. Alternatives to chemical treatments.
There is an alternatives analysis in the report.
Okay. And long-range goals.
Long-range goals, I guess this is the 5-year, this is for a 5-year plan. So it depends on what you're defining as long-range.
Yeah, unfortunately, these were from a discussion that the Conservation Commission had with us.
Understood.
Right.
And certainly we can clarify any of this before that meeting.
Right. Well, I mean, the application, once it goes to them, I'm sure they're going to be addressing these. I just wanted to make sure that from this point of view, that the email that went out to the LSIC from the town, at least that we gave them a heads up about this is what the Conservation Commission was going to be looking for. So.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd ask that before you also read this into the letter, that we have the opportunity to ask a few questions. So, when you were reviewing this, when you were creating this notice of intent, did you consider the existing order of conditions?
No, I did not.
Okay. And what was the reason for that, if you may?
Because that, to me, that is a closed order, so now we're working on a new order. And I was understood that there was controversy associated with that, and I just wanted to look at the science and go forward with this new application.
I appreciate that. The water quality, I'm not an environmental scientist, so I'm not going to ask you very specific environmental questions, as our chair alluded to. But more broadly, the water quality seems to have decreased over the last 15 years or so. So does this plan address that?
So this plan addresses algae control. So algae control is a result of poor water quality. Does it directly address the incoming water quality? No, it does not. And that's because that is, if you look at Dr. Wagner's report from WRS, over 2/3 of the phosphorus coming into the lake is from the main tributary, and that is beyond the control of what they're asking for here.
Okay. I have limited experience. I'm a property manager and contractor, but I manage a sewer treatment plant, which is bizarre because I have no skill set in the area, so we really contract that out. But I'm a little more versed in how things downstream really begin to affect numbers. Because what I see is, condo association that's constantly battling to get their numbers within the requirements. Meanwhile, what's coming into them, they have no control over, and those numbers are way out of whack. And so you're kind of like having to make up for what other people have done wrong.
Yes.
But you have, in this case, this, seems to be the point, the point in which there's some form of regulation attached to it.
Yep.
Whereas everything else
You're
is
treating the result rather than the symptom.
Exactly.
I mean, you're treating the symptom rather than the cause.
Okay.
Now, before you read this, I will say that everybody received this email, and this is definitely going to be, depending on what this board decides, to be in front of the Conservation Commission. Now, it's a public record, so you can certainly read it in. I don't know if it's, to be very honest, I don't know if it's appropriate, because it talks about a lot of the science and a lot of the things that the Conservation Commission saw when they read it, so it's lengthy. They're going to be addressing this anyway when it goes to them, but if you feel the need to do this.
I actually do, because I'd like to see what the aquatic ecologist has to say about this.
Okay.
Please review the following. This is from Richard Burrish today. He sent it to Heather and the Board of Selectmen, as well as the Conservation Commission. Conservation agent. Please review the following concerns about the recently received draft of the Lake Shirley Notice of Intent. In my opinion, this puts us back at square one. The application does not contain any of the current conditions or concerns laid out by the Commission. My concern in the BOS endorsing this application in its current form will place the Commission back having to dictate the scope and breadth of the proposed activities. This will put the LSIC back having to defend and argue every point the Commission puts forth. This application has no specific descriptions of any of the activities requested. No goals, no plan, no search for alternatives, no water quality testing. There is no proposed review by the commission prior to the use of pesticides, no public notice, no data collection, and no criteria on where, when, or how to apply pesticides into the waters of Lake Shirley. There is nothing in the application to support the use of a drawdown. There is no description of the process to be followed. There is no method to determine if this activity is successful. The narrative makes several assumptions based on a 2018 WRS report. The WRS report should be included, at least the conclusions. Many of the excerpts from the report are quoted as arguments against the concerns of the Commission. The full report needs to be reviewed for context. There is no mention of several concerns that the Commission has: fanwort, fish kill, drawdown, and it only argues against plant species concerns. It argues against pesticide residue using only the least treated year totals. There should be a discussion between the Board of Selectmen, the town, and the agent, LSIC, prior to this application being submitted to determine what the overall goals are for Lake Shirley. This application puts the Commission right back where it all started. The Commission should not be having to determine the scope of this activity. To view in a very general manner, this application is to perform specific activities to manage Lake Shirley. It needs to include the current conditions and what is wrong with these conditions, what the target conditions should be, the specific activity requested, and how it will achieve the target conditions, mechanism to measure the activities to prove they are successful, concerns for LSIC aquatic management application, the main interest of the Wetland Protection Act being cited as the reason for the management activity is wildlife and fisheries habitat restoration. There is no data presented on the current state of the habitat areas. There are no plans on what needs to be addressed in the habitat area. There is no specific description on how any activities will protect the habitat. There is no plan on how to determine if this activity is having a positive or negative effect. The weed and algae control will be done at the sole discretion of Lake Shirley Improvement Corp. The narrative introduction makes reference to a report from WRS in 2018 as proof of proper management. The WRS report goes on to say their opinion that proper management is being performed is in part due to the existing permitting process. This application removes that process. The WRS report goes on to say they have not done any study on the condition of the habitat at Lake Shirley. There are concerns about the current management of Lake Shirley: decrease in native plants, fish kill, fanwort, increase in algae blooms. There is no mention of how to address these concerns. The lake management plan is referenced, but not included in the application. The actual specific plan should be included. This plan should lay out all activities planned, why they are being performed, how they will be performed, and how they will be documented. The WRS study should also be included, as it is referenced many times in the narrative. The conclusions should be read in their entirety, as they contain several follow-up activities for Lake Shirley. The drawdown request has no data showing that activity is or has been effective. The only data shown actually downplays the effectiveness of the drawdown. There is also no description of how the drawdown level will be determined, monitored,
and data gathered. There is no plan for communications of dam operations. There is no emergency action plan for valve failure. The data table provided shows drawdown is effective for fanwort control, but the fanwort spread continues. The data table shows pondweed growth is increased by drawdown, resulting in more chemical treatments. DEP questioned the drawdown effectiveness in 2015 application process. Almost every report to LSIC has expressed the need for continued water quality data collection and reporting. There is no plan for water quality testing. A follow-up email from the from Matt Marrow. I have also reviewed this application and I share the same concerns. This is a multi-page application that doesn't say very much, I'm sorry to say. So, would you like to comment?
Yeah, well, I'd like to be able to have time to respond to those comments to the Conservation Commission.
Right.
I think your task here is not for me to comment on the
I
comments.
agree. And that's, I mean, that whole letter is something to be taken up at the Conservation Commission. These are all
And I don't
plan
mind,
requirements.
if I can get a copy of that, I don't mind trying to address those concerns.
Well, it was just read in, so it's public record, so sure. We can
Thank you.
get that to you.
So, the Conservation Commission obviously has a lot of concerns. How do you plan to work with the Conservation Commission to get those resolved?
Well, they reply to what's in front of them, right? So it's not really, we don't work with them to establish goals or anything like that. It's you address their concerns and you tell them essentially, and they approve or deny your permit. So when I get that list of items, I can certainly file an amendment to the NOI or just come in person, ready to speak to each one of those points. I mean, as of this time, that's my approach. I mean, sure, if I go back and think about it a little longer, I may have a different approach, but right now, that's what you asked me. That would be my approach.
Thank you.
Is there a plan for independent testing of the water?
So I had trained a bunch of volunteers this past summer, so they've been going out and collecting. It's actually in the report. They collect dissolved oxygen and temperature profiles. They also collect grab samples for water quality and algal samples. And in this plan, that's kind of, other than it's collected by volunteers, it's expensive when it comes to the laboratory. So what this NOI has outlined is when water clarity declines more than 5 feet, they would do that. And they would do that twice a week, or once every 2 weeks after that. So I'm not sure where the comment about not providing water quality data came from, but that's the plan. And, you know, I threw in some statistics on how much it actually costs. It's about $200 a sample for algae. And so that's why you set criteria of when you're going to collect it. You wouldn't want to collect it once a week, every week, at 3 different locations. It's just cost prohibitive. So.
And it's unnecessary if the water clarity is...
Correct. So they do have a plan for that. And the volunteers have been collecting, and they've been sending the samples off to a state-certified laboratory for nutrients and algae samples to a phycologist.
Have we heard from the Conservation Commission and their agent? I mean, this is a valid application. They have filed all the application forms and everything they are required by law to start this process. Is that correct?
Correct, besides the email that Selectman Luck just referenced. They haven't met.
Right. Well, that didn't say it wasn't a valid application. That says that they have
But the
some
Conservation
concerns.
Commission hasn't met to discuss this.
Right, okay.
Mr. Chair, may I ask the town manager a question?
Sure.
So I think that the town has a vested interest in the quality of its lakes. And that if we have an agent that is employing chemicals, I think the burden is on us to test and verify that what is being said is being done, as any responsible owner should do. So do we have funds allotted to be able, or can we allot funds to test independently Lake Shirley if it's being treated?
I can't answer that without knowing how much that would cost.
Assuming it's, what would a normal schedule of testing?
So ideally, you would do monthly. If you were to do a good, robust monitoring program, you would do a monthly sampling of nutrients in this lake, and then you would do the follow-up phycology assessment on occasion where you would have the water quality decline. So it runs you about $200 a sample, so there's 3 distinct coves, so $300, $600, and then you have the consultant's time or the volunteers, and it's about $1,000 a day for a consultant to come out and do those samples, package them up for a lab. And so you can see that if you're doing 6 months or 5 months, it adds up pretty fast. And I totally agree with you that this is a town resource, and it would really be nice to see a partnership instead of, what we got going on here. That's just my personal opinion. And if there is, because it does draw some tax base for the town. You do get higher property values with greater water quality. In fact, you see, there's a study in Maine that said there's 15% decline in property assessment values for every meter of water clarity decline. So that could add up pretty fast with 281 Lunenburg residents right on Lake Shirley. And then I know you have Hickory Hills and you have 2 other water bodies. I mean, something for the town to consider, maybe a lake committee or something to do some of the work themselves. Or
If I can just add, there's going to be there's a whole process, like Chairman Alonso referred to, that the Conservation Commission is going to be reviewing the application. It will come back before the board after the final decisions are made by the Conservation Commission for submittal. So this will not be the only time this is seen by this board.
I don't think we've reviewed notice of intents before.
It was a long time ago, whatever the last one was, 2015, yeah. I can't recall.
Is it
So
possible?
the notice of intent,
Because we're the owner, we have to approve that their plan can go forward. That's what tonight's meeting's about. And then when it gets approved by whatever happens with the order of conditions that happens from the Conservation Commission, then it's supposed to come back here to get approved on the other way, that we accept them. LSIC can't accept them on our behalf.
I guess, I expect that there's going to, and I'm saying this to Heather and I'm saying this to you as well, I expect that the Conservation Commission is going to review this and issue a determination similar to the one they've given for the renewed order of conditions. So I expect that that's going to happen. I don't know though. So I also expect that this is going to continue to be a very difficult process for all people involved over the next several months. But I think that we have a responsibility as a town, separate from the details of the NOI, because none of us, or maybe some people I'm not aware of, but I'm certainly not qualified to make any decision on the meats and potatoes of what's in this. But I think that we have a vested interest. When we have an agent that is applying chemicals to a resource, that we ought to be verifying the data, and that to me, that burden should not be placed on our agent, that should be placed on us. That, I don't, there are many ways to look at the tax situation. I don't know if I wholly agree with what's been stated, but I think that out of our tax base, that allotting, $1,800 a month for 5 months, to me, that's a reasonable request to verify that, $400,000 that's being spent, or whatever it is, to maintain this lake, by volunteers, that the result is what we expect it to be. So I would just hope that by the next time that this comes before us, before this is all resolved, that we have some clarity on our side if the town can allocate money to do this independent test. Because as I understand it, that was a really big bone of contention this last time around. And I think if we can eliminate that, then we can have a real conversation about the science and the data, not just the economic burden of the results. So with that, I move to approve this notice of intent so it may proceed to the Conservation Commission.
thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
Before, just to comment to Mr. Jeffries, I mean, I think your comments, we can have them, that's really not part of the whole NOI process. So if you have ideas, and obviously you do, in that regard, that can be taken up separately at a different time. That should in no way impede the process or the whole mechanism of this application. So this should go to the Conservation Commission. And once you have this email that was read into the record, you'll have all of their questions in advance. So
Appreciate that, thank you.
no problem. Any other further discussion? All those in favor of approving this and sending this to the Conservation Commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I abstain.
So 3-1 with 3-0, 1 abstention.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Is Adam coming tonight?
Yeah, he's here.
Oh, he's here now. All right. If you would like to join us.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
You want me up here or you?
Wherever you feel is more comfortable.
Well,
we had your name tag out.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Well, how about I stand here?
That's
That way
fine.
I'm looking at you as I talk to you as opposed to looking across some of you and at others.
All right, so we have discuss the proposed response to the open meeting law complaint received from Joanna Blotter on August 6, 2019, related to the acting chairman's actions on the Board of Selectmen meeting on July 23rd, 2019. Vote is expected.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 5 copies of the proposed response. As you know, once I provide this to you, it is a public document, so I have a few extra copies. I suspect that there are 1 or 2 in the audience who may be interested. I didn't bring a ton of extras, but I'll put a couple of them here. So I know that some of you, maybe all of you, are generally familiar with the open meeting law complaint process, but I'll give a quick overview and then tell you what I've done in the context of this particular complaint. So when the open meeting law was recodified a number of years ago, they established the Division of Open Government, which is a new entity within the Attorney General's office. The Division of Open Government has as its only task the enforcement of the open meeting law. And as part of that process, there is a local process whereby an individual who believes that there's been a violation of the open meeting law can first notify the board or commission or committee, the public body, that he or she believes there's been a violation of the law. That places the public body on a clock, a 14 business day clock, to prepare a response. That response gets sent back to the complainant, and a copy gets sent along to the Division of Open Government, together with a copy of the original complaint that was received, simply putting the division on notice that a complaint has been received and responded to, given that the complainant doesn't file the complaint with the division at the time that it files it with the public body. The complainant then has an opportunity, if he or she so chooses, to either be satisfied with the response that's been received or the action that may have been taken in response to the complaint, or if the complainant is dissatisfied, the complainant can then pursue further remedies, further recourse through the Division of Open Government by submitting a request that the division take further action. And then the division will do its own investigation and will make a determination in writing to the public body that there either has or has not been an open meeting law violation and determine what the appropriate remedy should be. So we've received a complaint. The complaint was dated August 6th of 2019. It made reference to a meeting of the Board of Selectmen on July 23rd of 2019. You, Mr. Chairman, were not present at that meeting, but the other 4 members of the board were present at that meeting. Selectman Luck, as vice chair, was the acting chair for the purposes of that meeting. And the substance of the complaint, the complainant, Joanna Blotter, who's in attendance tonight, on behalf of the Lake Shirley Improvement Corporation, complained, and I'll just read the complaint so that it's clear what the substance of it is. At the July 23rd, 2019 meeting, which was televised, the chairman, Tom Alonso, was absent. Phyllis Luck presided as acting chair during the public comment period. Acting Chair Luck read from an extensive prepared text commenting on matters involving the Lake Shirley Improvement Corporation, currently in litigation with the town. The litigation involves the Conservation Commission, of which Mrs. Luck's husband is a member, and which has already been the subject of a separate open meeting law violation. The Lake Shirley Improvement Corporation was not notified that it was to be the subject of the meeting, and nothing regarding the corporation, the litigation, or even the lake appeared on the agenda. Then says in parentheses, a copy is attached here too. I understand that boards routinely, I think it's meant to say routinely, have public comment periods during which citizens might make a comment that the chair could not have anticipated and could not reasonably have been expected to include in the agenda. But here, these were the acting chair's own prepared remarks. It is hard to imagine a situation where something more clearly could have been anticipated and included. One is forced to conclude that the omission was deliberate and intended to prevent the LSIC to respond. One point of clarification I'll make that concludes the description of the alleged violation. There's a reference here to an open meeting law violation having already occurred. That's not entirely accurate. There was an allegation, as you probably know, that an open meeting law violation occurred. In fact, there were 3 separate allegations relating to a meeting conducted by the Conservation Commission relative to the LSIC. I assisted the commission in responding to those complaints and submitted responses to the division of to the complainants, and one of those proceeded to the Division of Open Government. We don't have a response from the division as of yet in that regard, so we don't know whether that is deemed to be a violation or not. We did concede in our letter that we believed it was a violation and we took remedial action, but there has been no opinion yet from the Division of Open Government. So the process that I undertake on behalf of boards, commissions, committees of the town when there's been an open meeting law violation or an alleged open meeting law violation is I conduct an investigation of my own. I speak to generally the chair of that board, if the chair was the individual who was at the meeting and was generally familiar with what occurred. In this case, it was a bit different because you, Mr. Chairman, weren't present at the meeting at which the allegation of an open meeting law violation was made. And so I had a conversation with Mrs. Luck. I also had an opportunity, a benefit I have in Lunenburg and not in every other community, of watching the video because you televise your meeting. So I was able to watch the video and watch the portion of the meeting when the statement was given during the public comment or board comment session. So based upon the conversation I had, based upon my review, and based upon a fair amount of research I had to do on this one, some of these are relatively straightforward. This one was not. This is unique. I can't say that I've had, and as you know, I represent a number of other communities and have had many an opportunity to assist them in responding to open meeting law complaints. I've not had one before relating to the public comment session of a public meeting. So this one was unique in that respect. There's sort of an expectation that during the public comment session, things will be said that are unanticipated, things that will be said that are not specifically identified on the agenda. That's sort of the nature of public comment, and those aren't open meeting law violations. Sometimes the topics that are addressed are not even topics that are within the jurisdiction of the board, but it's an opportunity, especially with a board of selectmen as the chief executive officials of a community, it's an opportunity for residents to get up and sort of say their piece and raise concerns or make comments on various topics that might be of some importance to the town or to those in town government. This one's a little different, obviously, because we're talking about a comment by a member of the board. We're talking about a comment not by the chair, but by somebody who is acting as chair that evening and who is typically the vice chair. So if you have my written response, and again, this is just a proposed response based upon my investigation, the purpose of this meeting is to talk through it, and if you have comments or concerns or you want this modified or scrapped altogether, that's in your discretion. I craft it based upon my research. You'll see that I provided an introduction that acknowledges receipt of the complaint on the first page, provides a little bit of the background. I thought that was appropriate here, given that the complaint itself commented on litigation, commented on another dispute with the LSIC, and I wanted to be sure that I was clear in describing the background here and what this other reference was to another open meeting law complaint or a violation. So that's what's on the first page of the letter. On page 2 of the letter, I explained that at the Selectmen's behest, I've conducted an investigation, as I always do, which consisted of speaking with Mrs. Luck, as well as reviewing the video. And then I go into sort of the substance of what I found through my research, some of which was already known to me, some of which was what I was able to find in the other determinations issued by the Division of Open Government in somewhat similar but not identical circumstances. The long and the short of this, and you can see it, the crux of it is really on the larger paragraph on page 2, and then on the paragraph that begins at the end of page 2 and carries on to page 3, that it's unclear whether what occurred here constitutes a violation of the open meeting law. And the reason why it's unclear is because had the statement been made by somebody who was chair, as opposed to acting chair, as opposed to vice chair, the person responsible for establishing the agenda, I would not disagree with the statements that were made by Ms. Bellotta and by Attorney Bowen, who submitted a letter that accompanied the open meeting law complaint, that certainly those topics would have been reasonably anticipated by the chair, and that is the standard for including an item, one of the standards for including an item on an agenda of a public body. In this instance, the agenda, as I understand it from my conversation with Mrs. Luck, the agenda is not something that was set by Mrs. Luck. It was set by the chair, as it always is, except that Mrs. Luck was the one who was presiding over that meeting because the chair was absent. And as vice chair, she was acting chair that evening. So it's a little different than some of the cases, and you'll see I've cited one. And in the one case, it's cited at the top of page 3, there were 2 individuals. Chairman Woodard was one of the individuals. Selectman Simon was another. It was a select board. And in this instance, there were statements that were made by the chair that were not on the agenda, but then there were further statements made from a prepared script by another member of the Board of Selectmen. And the Division of Open Government said, well, the statements by the chair were a violation of the open meeting law because the chair certainly could have anticipated those. Violation of the open meeting law by the chairman, who reasonably anticipated at least 48 hours in advance a statement made by him at a meeting. And the substance of that open meeting law determination by the division was that an investigation had been conducted and the investigator had conversations and found out that he made statements like, well, this had been rolling around in my head for many weeks and I anticipated saying something, and yet he hadn't placed the item on the agenda. But there was another member of the Board of Selectmen that also made a statement and read from a prepared statement, but that wasn't anticipated by the chair. And so the chair didn't have that statement on the agenda either, but the division said, well, that one wasn't a violation because it wasn't reasonably anticipated by the chair. So again, this is somewhere in between, because we have an individual who was not simply acting as a member that night, but is also not routinely the chair of the board, but is the vice chair and was acting as chair for that meeting. So that's the sum and substance of it. I get into some detail as to the very definition of meeting and what constitutes a deliberation. There's some case law that suggests, on the one hand, that one-way communication, and you probably heard me say this in my open meeting law training a number of months back, one-way communication to a quorum of a board outside of a public meeting can constitute deliberation. And yet there's some open meeting law determinations that indicate that when a member of a board made a statement that was not on the agenda, but there was no response and no discussion, and quickly the meeting turned to the next item on the agenda, that wasn't an open meeting law violation. And in many respects, that's exactly what occurred. I watched the video. Mrs. Luck made a statement. It went on for the better part of 6 or 7 or 8 minutes, and then immediately another member of the public got up and spoke about something different, and then the meeting went along the usual agenda that was scheduled for that evening. So there's some open meeting law determination guidance that would suggest that means this is not a violation. There's also some guidance that would suggest that because this isn't a topic that is really within the jurisdiction of the board, I understand that you've had matters, and you just had a matter that came before you involving the LSIC. But the substance of the statement that was made was about other statements that had been made by the LSIC and how Mrs. Luck felt those affected her and her wanting to sort of set the record straight, and spoke about her involvement or lack of involvement with LSIC as a resident of the lake. Those are not topics that are before this board. They've not been before this board. You have issues before the board like, how do you want the lake treated, and do you want to give authority to the LSIC to perform treatment and authorize submittal of a notice of intent? But those are different issues. And so the question also is this even within your jurisdiction? And if it's not, then you wouldn't be obligated to put it on the agenda, because it wouldn't in and of itself, a discussion about that topic, even outside of a meeting, wouldn't constitute a meeting under the open meeting law because it's not within the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. So there's a lot of competing factors here. There's no case directly on point. There's all these cases that sort of hit it sort of around the edges. And so my overall sense here, and I've stated this, is that I don't believe this is a violation based upon piecing together those various other cases. But I can't say that with absolute certainty, because there's no case directly on point. And so the recommendation that I've made here, and I spoke to Mrs. Luck about this, and I obviously defer to her and to the board as a whole, the recommendation I've had, and I make this recommendation whenever either I determine there's been a violation or it's not quite clear whether there's been a violation, is that remedial action be taken. That's something that the Division of Open Government has made available in its regulations. It's something that municipalities seize upon when a violation is brought to their attention. They take remedial or corrective action. Sometimes that means a lengthy discussion a second time of a topic that went on at length for 1 or 2 or 3 meetings it shouldn't have. It means disclosing things that were discussed in executive session. In this case, it's fairly simple. It simply means making the statement at an open public meeting and publishing that statement as part of the meeting minutes at the meeting at which it is being discussed, and having it on the agenda for that meeting. So there's no question that if, as suggested in the complaint, there's a desire on the part of individual or individuals from the LSIC to show up and to take an opportunity during public comment to respond, they have that opportunity to do it. So that's the remedial action that I have proposed here. Is a possibility if the board wants to include it. That could be placed on a future agenda of the board. The last thing I want to comment on, and this is something that I don't often have to address in these responses, but I had to here because it was something that was discussed at length in the complaint and in Attorney Bowen's accompanying letter. There's a space on the open meeting law complaint form that follows the question, what action do you want the public body to take in response to your complaint? So this is a request by the complainant for a certain remedy, certain recourse that the board should undertake. And there's a variety of requests here, and I've addressed them here in the bottom of page 3. Number 1, that the correspondence should be from Attorney Bowen that was submitted together with the complaint should be quote unquote read publicly, that it should be made a part of the minutes of the meeting at which the complaint is discussed, and that it should be included with the minutes of the meeting at which Mrs. Lux inappropriate remarks were made, and I'm quoting from the complaint. In some respects, at least one of these 3, arguably 2 of these 3, have already been fulfilled by virtue of this process. So we're discussing this now, where we're discussing an open meeting law complaint that, number 1, by virtue of its submittal to the town, number 2, by virtue of discussing it tonight, is now a public record. And the statement is a public record, will become part of the meeting minutes of this meeting. And so there's no question that occurs as by operation of law. You couldn't avoid it. I have some trouble suggesting that this letter from Attorney Bowen, which is dated August 6th, be made part of meeting minutes from the Selectmen's meeting back on July 23rd. There's no mechanism to make that occur. I suppose that if the Division of Open Government were to order it, I don't foresee that happening, but I suppose if that were to occur, then it could occur. But there's nothing in the open meeting law or the accompanying regulations that allow you to retroactively modify meeting minutes to reflect something that was not discussed or before the board or even crafted until 2 weeks after the meeting. So I don't really see that as being an available remedy. But certainly to the extent that there's a desire that it be part of the meeting minutes of tonight's meeting, it will be, because the law requires it. Similarly, to the extent that there's a desire that it get read aloud, well, I guess I read a portion of the complaint aloud. I didn't read Attorney Bowen's letter aloud. I defer to the board as to whether you would want to do that at tonight's meeting, you would want to do that at a future meeting, or you would simply want to defer to the LSIC and say, if you want to read a statement aloud, read it aloud during the public comment session. We have one at the start and the end of every selectmen's meeting, and you have that opportunity. So I've spoken at length, but this is a fairly complex open meeting law complaint simply because of the nature of it and how unusual it is, and hence my response is fairly comprehensive. But that's my recommendation to the board, but I'm certainly happy to respond to any questions you have or modify it as you wish.
Anybody have any questions for town council?
No.
No. I don't. I just have one comment. I mean, I will go ahead with your recommendation. I think the remedial action is to read something that people took offense to make it, the remedy is to read it again at another meeting. Sure, I think that makes total sense. Number 1. Number 2 is, more importantly, that a public comment, while being chair of any body that's subject to open meeting law, should not provide any additional protections. It shouldn't eliminate protections that the general public would have. So if somebody would get up and have said the same thing, I spoke to Mrs. Luck about this after I returned and found out what she did, and I told her it was ill-advised to speak something like that to begin with. But as a violation attempt, I think that if somebody could speak those same words and not be subject to it, the fact that she being acting chair would be subject to it seems to be kind of a real contortion of what open meeting law is, especially in public comment section, especially as you noted about a subject that really doesn't have anything to do with the Board of Selectmen, that she was answering people's claim to her and her family about their involvement or in LSIC, which has, again, aside from approving notices of intent, we really don't have any jurisdiction over, especially since she didn't approve the agenda, but also as chair of any meeting, that would prevent somebody from making a public comment impromptu the night that they came to a meeting, something came to them, they would be precluded from doing that because they were chair and they should have known, even though the agenda had to be approved 48 hours before. That means they're not allowed to have anything that they can say before then. Seems to really undermine the whole idea of public comment at all. Because we're board members and commission members and committee members, depending on what body you're talking about, but we're still citizens of the town and we should be afforded the same public comment right within the same constraints as the public meeting, the public comment rules that anybody is subject to. You know, the length of time limitations, which were very flexible here in town. But nobody is not afforded that right. And I think to indicate, even peripherally, that somebody could have, that it's a gray area that they could have violated, really is something that I take, maybe offense is probably a strong word, but I certainly raises an eyebrow about the application of open meeting law in that case. However, I don't want to spend any more time than we already have with this. I have no problem approving this this draft. I don't know if anybody else feels like we can approve it tonight to be sent, or would you want to think about it?
I mean, I think that this is, you know, I sat here while Ms. Luck made the public comment. I mentioned to her after the meeting that I did not think that was the best idea. But, I mean, to me, it was very clearly a public comment. You know, it wasn't on the agenda. None of us responded to it. And it certainly was a result of weeks of hearing other public comments directly attacking Ms. Luck and her husband, which, you know, regardless as to whether or not we think that those attacks were valid or not, or even if they were attacks, there were a lot of comments made for a lot of weeks that were clearly directed at Ms. Luck and her husband, Selectman Luck and her husband, and she responded to it. I would have just let it sit there, because this all seems very personal. It seems beyond the scope, in my opinion, of this just has a very personal feeling to it. Not, you know, it's hard for me to understand in a public comment section to say that a member of the board, if you're acting in a different capacity for the evening, that you have to be silent, that your voice is silenced then because of that. I mean, you know, people should be able to say that there's purple men underneath their basement if they want to. You know, I don't think that that's something you should be saying. I'm using that as an extreme example, but people should be able to say whatever they want to say during public comment. And it just seems like this is just an ongoing, at this point, this is starting to seem like an attempt to attack people. That's what it seems like.
And I just add that, I mean, I was here too, and I certainly wouldn't have said those things. I agree that it was ill-advised, but contrary to popular belief, we let anyone who wants to say anything come up here and do it, and we listen. To cut them off or say they don't have the right to say it is just, I mean, not standard practice for us at all. So I went along with it. We didn't comment on it, didn't go anywhere with it, but it was her public comment to make. I wouldn't have done it myself. I rarely make a public comment at all, but I don't see it as an open meeting law violation. It was a public comment.
So in the airing of caution, we will take this, and I entertain a motion that we approve this, and then we will put on, we will follow your remedial action. We will put this on an agenda item, to which the whole statement can be read yet again, and then if somebody from the LSIC wants to read a letter back, we will give them the opportunity to do that, and we will close that matter.
I don't support that. I mean, at all. I mean, I think that we have to be neighbors here at some point and kind of say, how do we go, what's the next step in our relationship and our ability to work together? What's the next step? How do we do that? How do we get there? And if we keep fighting this battle back and forth, we're not moving forward. I mean, there's a lot of people right now who are suffering. There's a lot of people at home right now who are in awful conditions, and we can't get to, in my opinion, there's only so much mental energy when you're up here. There's only so much time in the day. And all these issues that I think we could be tackling, instead we're talking about, whether or not a public comment in a public comment was a public comment. I think we have to think about, how do we work together? How do we get to that next step? There's clearly a divide here between what is going on. So how do we bridge that gap? And to me, that doesn't help it.
Well, the order before us was mandated by law because it was an official complaint. So that's where we are.
No, I'm referring to the last section on page 3, that the remediation stuff. I don't support the remediation stuff.
The remedial action, just to be clear, is an option that's presented. Again, I present it in every circumstance where I don't find a case directly on point that I can direct the division to and say, we did exactly what they did here and you said it was fine. Doesn't need to be taken. You can modify the remedial action in any way you choose. You can choose to take no remedial action and stand on the ground that this was not an open meeting law violation. And I will adjust the letter accordingly. I presented it as an option. I told Mrs. Luck that I would do that in the draft that I presented to the board tonight, but I can just as easily take it out. I purposely made it a self-contained paragraph that can be eliminated from the letter without changing the general scope or direction of the letter.
Yeah. I'm also in favor of the draft except for the remedial action because I don't see how that use of time and energy is going to help anything. I mean,
I'm not, believe me, as you heard from my comment, I'd be against the whole thing too, but I just wanted to go ahead I just want to close the subject.
What I can suggest, Mr. Chairman, is if there's a desire to eliminate the remedial action, I can simply make note within the text of the letter that to the extent that the LSIC desires to avail itself of public comment, you have that opportunity at the beginning and the end of every meeting, whether it's the LSIC or any one member or the president, that opportunity presents itself, and put a period at the end of that sentence and be done with it.
Well, it sounds like from the board that's what is desired. So if we do that and submit it, we can approve it at the next week's meeting.
It has to be submitted before then, right?
It does. So we already have an extension of the 14 business days.
Okay.
I got us through Thursday. So what I would propose doing, if you're comfortable generally with the substance of what's before you, is on page 3 of the letter. You can see that there's a paragraph in the middle that says all of the above notwithstanding, and then it proceeds to talk about remedial action. I would simply eliminate that paragraph and I would replace it with a sentence indicating that there is an opportunity at each and every meeting for members of the public, including the LSIC or any members of the LSIC, to participate in public comment at both the beginning and the end of every meeting, and leave it at that, and then proceed to address the remedy and proceed to conclude the letter.
Fine with me. Is it fine with the rest of the board?
Yes.
Yep, it's fine with me.
I'd make a motion that we approve this draft with the modifications just outlined to paragraph 2 on page 3 by Attorney Costa.
Second.
All those in favor?
We have discussion this.
Yeah.
Is it possible, Mr. Chair, for you to extend an invitation to the LSIC to formally come here and be on our agenda, to have a conversation with them about we're clearly not on the same page. So how do we get to that page? How do we get on the same page? And I mean, it's hard in public comments because you can't really respond and go back and forth. But I mean, I want to make sure that we're hearing what's being said and that we have a better working relationship, because this is our agent. I mean, clearly their actions are not satisfied with us. So, I mean, we need to repair that. So, I mean, I think that I do approve this letter, but I think we gotta go a little bit beyond what's in this letter and just address the overall issue here that I think we keep getting little snippets of.
And what, I mean, I'm not against putting things on the agenda. I just don't understand what the format and what the goal would be.
Well, I mean, I think maybe extending the invitation will clarify, their opinion or what the opinion is of the leadership within LSIC to be able to vocalize to us the areas that they are struggling with. I mean, we're getting open meeting violations that to me are stretch. I mean, we're getting, the clear conflict with our appointees on the Conservation Commission. I mean, the clear legal action that's being advanced that has happened. I mean, there's a problem here. So I mean, we need to have a conversation with them to figure out how do we resolve that. I mean, if it's just they don't like the results, I mean, there's not much authority we have to do over some things, but at least we need to know that. And I think public comments hasn't gotten us here.
Well, I agree, and I don't think a televised conversation is probably going to get terribly much further by putting anybody on the spot on either side. I mean, people are going to, how candid are people going to be having that kind of conversation on a televised program on Tuesday night?
Well, I mean, I've heard some pretty outrageous things already in publicized meetings, so, I mean, I imagine...
We can discuss putting an agenda item. You and I can discuss putting an agenda item. Not against it, but I'd want to know what the goals of and who gets to speak, and what are the topics we're speaking about.
I guess I would encourage you to extend the invitation to LSIC leadership and see if it's something that they're interested in, and perhaps they can vocalize what their interest in this would be.
We would be happy to attend any workshop at any time to try to get past the personality conflicts and move forward for the body of water.
Okay, we can try to schedule that.
Okay, great.
Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor of the motion to approve this draft as proposed to be amended by town council, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Discussion on setting a date for a fall special town meeting.
So in your drive are two proposed options for both with a date of November 12th, Tuesday, November 12th, for a special town meeting. And so option one, the time frame allows for less opportunity for both the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee to review the warrant, just because how the dates fall. But if we set the meeting or open the warrant earlier and closed it within the appropriate time frame, it would allow for more meetings to discuss the warrant.
I think we should go with option 2. More time's better, I think.
That would
I
be
would concur.
my recommendation as well.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds great.
All right.
All right, so option 2, it sounds like, do we need a motion? Yes.
To set the,
Yes.
yes, to set the date of the special town meeting as well as what the opening and closing dates will be.
So I would entertain a motion to set the date for a special town meeting to Tuesday, November 12th, 2019, to open the warrant on Tuesday, September 10th, and close the warrant on Monday, September 30th at 5 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I guess I would like to make sure that the dates are posted on the town calendar and Facebook, wherever else, because usually it's hard to find those dates. You know, the Ritter
Let's put it on
Building, the high school.
website front page, and then post it, physically post it, I guess.
The calendar is controlled by the town clerk, so I can ask her to post
Great.
that in the calendar.
But I mean physically, like putting paper notice places too.
Well, it's the warrant will be posted and it will be in the
Yeah,
paper.
and obviously it'll be
It
in-
gets put in the
it'll be in-
paper.
yeah, okay.
And on Facebook.
The high school is really
and
good about
number
putting things on
Okay.
their electronic sign.
So that
I think
would,
the sooner we get that out, the better.
that'll give somebody 20 days, 20 calendar days to put in warrants.
Articles.
Articles, thank you. Do you want to talk about this tonight or no? Discussion identifying repairs to the old primary school?
Yep, we can briefly go over that. It's not a lot of discussion.
So
I think
discussion
we
on
have,
identifying repairs to the old primary school.
So I, as a response to a letter that we received from the Architectural Preservation District Commission, asked the facilities director to get a quote for the repairs that they identified in that letter. And that is in your drive. The total estimate is approximately $10,000 in repairs. And I would like guidance, even though this is under the town manager's jurisdiction, that I would like guidance from the board, because this is a building that we've been talking about as far as what the plans for that building are. That is one of the selectmen's goals for the old primary school, and whether we want to put money towards this facility when we have other facilities that need repairs.
Not a penny. My advice, not a penny.
Well,
And what does this do? So we spend $10,869 or $870, and we gain what?
They identified these repairs as prohibiting further weather deterioration to the building, to make it more weather tight, and so it wouldn't fall into further just repair due to weather.
so I think this is a data point that we need to include in a larger package of information we should be assembling to file with them for a demolition permit. Because this only, $10,000, that's pennies. Why don't we do that? That'll fix the building up. That doesn't do anything towards fixing the building up. It just stabilizes it in its current condition. There's a much larger number associated with fixing it up that we clearly do not have the money to do, that we need to use to make a case of how much that's going to cost to fix the building up. And we also, one of the things I said we should be doing is see if there is anyone else, in fact, interested in fixing it up, to again, either, provide an alternative or prove to them that nobody wants this building and it needs to be torn down and we can't afford to fix it ourselves. So,
Since this is one of our 3 goals, I think that we should probably put this on our workshop for the 17th.
10th.
What?
Right, next week?
Is it, did we switch it out?
Yep,
Okay.
the second meeting.
Yes. So we should talk about this next week, because we need to start on that goal, and that's what we should start on, that goal about what to do with that building.
But, I mean, for the people at home who are hearing this conversation, and I think that, I mean, are you guys actually in favor of spending this money?
No, I'm in favor of discussing, this is the first I'm seeing the number.
Okay.
So I don't have an immediate visceral reaction as you did. I can't say I'm in favor of it either. I don't know. I want to know what the options are, but I know at the end of the day, when I'm presented with options, I will come to a determination for myself, which I won't waffle about which one I think we should do. I just think we need to make a determination.
In the workshops next week, so it's a perfect time to.
Right. So it's a good segue to bring this up then. 2 weeks.
It's great data to have for that meeting.
I mean, $10,000 or almost $11,000 to stabilize a building that has serious structural problems, or serious maintenance and repair problems to begin with, for the sole purpose so it doesn't get worse when, I think Mr. McQuaid is right. What are the options of it getting better?
Yeah.
it's like putting a Band-Aid on someone who's having a heart attack. It's not, so I mean...
so we can keep an abandoned building, another 6 years? Is that it? So hopefully we have to decide once and for all what we have to do.
But again, we need to address this with the APDC, because they've notified us we're in violation. We can't just keep saying, we're not going to do anything about it. We need to, file with them for a demolition and get the data required to do that.
Well, what's their teeth, though? I'm never a fan of government doing things that people cannot themselves do. But what can the AP?
They can take us to court. They can sue us, yes.
Okay. And we have to approve to spend that money, though, as the board.
Well, again, all of a sudden it goes, every time, it just goes right down that rat hole all the time. Like, why don't we sit and discuss it with them before we talk about what kind of teeth they have and what their options are? You know, for someone who just talked about having a conversation and not having these kind of
No, I'm
escalations,
interested.
I would propose the same thing back to you.
But I'm saying, like, I guess my question is really is just like, what, other than telling us that we're in violation, like, okay, we get a letter, but what does that do?
Well,
and I think that you just answered me, they can sue us.
Well, I don't, yeah, but I also don't want to flout their authority too. They have authority that we've given them as a town, and I don't want to just totally dismiss it either. I mean, I think, believe me, I think there are always circumstances and there are always things to discuss, and I think we need to have them, we should invite them, if we can, send them an email.
Next week's meeting?
Yeah, to invite them to the meeting, because that's one of the things we have to talk about. I mean, again, when is a building beyond what you can expect, whether it's a private residence or a public entity, to maintain anymore, because it's not cost effective? I think that's a good question to ask them. And somebody said, I mean, somebody could come up with potentially, well, you should have done this 10 years ago. And I'm like, great. So we'll get in our time machine and we'll go back 10 years. I mean, I want to know what we need to do now. So I think we need to have that discussion. So I don't think we're going to, it's good to have this number,
Yes, I think it's good data.
but,
Yeah, this is good data, but I mean, so someone who just looked at this will say, oh, it's not that bad, do it. But there's a much bigger, scarier number associated with actually fixing the building.
Right.
Have we given you good advice, Heather?
I have a direction.
north by northeast. Request from Lanny Orchards to petition the state legislature for additional package store license. So, as everybody knows, by state law, where we have so many package store licenses per population, and we are at our limit, at our capacity, so the only way to get an additional one, or additional ones, plural, would be to petition the state legislature.
Now, what I was reading in the material that was provided for us was that there's two routes that can be taken here. That one is to have it worded in such a way that makes it clear that if it's given, it's going to go to Lanny's, and the other one is to just more broadly have it for the town.
Well, I don't think we can. I think we have to offer a license up for application. I don't know that we can ask for an additional license and dedicate it to a person. Can we?
Town council did answer that question, and I'll let him come speak about that. Or ask him to come speak.
You actually can.
Okay.
It surprised me too, but I've done it a number of times for a number of communities. So generally the way that the special legislation is drafted, it's a 2 or 3 article piece of legislation that is approved by town meeting that ultimately gets submitted to the legislature for adoption, and it identifies the entity to which the license will be assigned, and then it specifies whether, in the event that that entity were to dissolve or the entity were to discontinue operations, what occurs to that license. Does that license, is it eliminated upon dissolution of that entity or upon cessation of business? Or does it become available to the town to reassign to another entity? I've seen it these acts drafted both ways. In some cases, they simply are extinguished upon the closure of the business, and in other cases, they go back to the town and the town can reassign them.
That seems like the ultimate special treatment.
Special legislation.
So just from my own background, how do they determine how many licenses we get as a town? Is it population driven?
Yeah.
Correct.
And we haven't increased our population in recent enough years?
No, we recently got, I think, like the last census, I think we got another license. We went over the 10,000 threshold, and I think we got another license.
It's a range.
I mean, I've been on the record saying that I think the whole thing is patently absurd, is that since the whole thing has to go through a process and it's got to be approved by the ABCC, I don't understand why we have any limit. It's like limiting the amount of grocery stores you have in your town. It makes absolutely no sense to me. If the town can, support it by the market, then it should support it. If you are trying to regulate bad people, well, this whole ABCC process, there's all Corey checks and everything about everybody else to do this. So to me, limiting it makes no sense.
I don't know if I agree with you on that.
Well, you don't. It wouldn't be the first time, even tonight, that you didn't agree with me.
To be clear, just because you're identifying a particular entity doesn't mean that the process is sort of circumscribed. The entity still needs to make application to U.S. Liquor Licensing Authority. You still got to approve it. It still has to go to the ABCC. So all of those boxes still need to be checked to ensure that the entity qualifies and the manager is over the age of 18, has no felony convictions and all that sort of stuff.
Well, from my perspective, I would not support special legislation that identifies a person who will get it. I would say we get an open license and they can apply for it, personally, but.
Is one way more arduous than the other? Or are it's the same way?
No.
So
Town council says no.
More generic.
And I also wouldn't request just one. I probably would request two while we're at it.
I feel the same way. I would feel limited by this. It doesn't, I think it hurts the town to be limited. So I would request two also. Give them to people who need them or want them.
Is there, in your experience, is the request of one or two, again, more likely or less likely to succeed?
I don't know. So I've done this one of two ways, and I've not done it the third way, which is I think what you're suggesting. So I've done it specific to entity. In fact, in most instances, I've done it almost all instances, it's been specific to entity. So a particular applicant comes forward, has an operation, wishes to get a liquor license, but can't because you're at quota, and so petitions the selectmen, and they petition town meeting, and special legislation allows them to obtain the license. I've also seen it done in circumstances not where you're seeking an expansion of your quota, but you've created an economic development district, for example, and you're trying to spur development within that district. And in an effort to do so, you're seeking additional licenses that will be limited to a certain location, a certain district. I've seen it done that way too. In terms of additional townwide licenses, I don't know whether it'd be more likely to pass one versus two. I can do some research and try to get a sense as to, what's happened in other instances based upon population. Has the legislature said, well, you're already at quota and you're a small community, so if you get two more, you're going to be likened to some other communities that are twice your population, and we're not inclined to do that, whereas one wouldn't be quite so substantial a change. I don't know the answer to that, but I can do some poking around and get you some guidance.
And what are the success rates of these generally?
They're routinely approved.
Which
I've not had one.
Which basically proves my initial point, which is the whole thing is just a ridiculously, it's a ridiculous whole limitation. If they routinely improve, that means they don't think anything of their limitations. Otherwise, they wouldn't be routinely improved. I hate when I invoke logic into the local or state
legislature. Yeah, right.
I think there's other considerations on the.
All right, so let's get the research about how we should do it. I'm not against petitioning in some way. I'm less likely to petition it exactly for somebody. It just seems to be excluding anybody else who might want one. So anybody else, if there was a vacant license or an available license, we would entertain applicants. So I don't. Is there a cost to doing this? No? Okay. So.
Jeez.
Minutes?
We still have two old business items.
Yes, I have number two. Yes,
All right.
I'm aware.
Okay.
But we have to do the warrants, right? We may table number two unless there's a reason why not to.
Adam's here. Maybe a good opportunity.
Well, let's do the public comment since that came up, and we can forego the. All right, so we got minutes from August 6th, July 23rd, and July 16th. I can't sign this one.
I need this because I think I misplaced mine somewhere.
There you go. Warrants, accounts payable, $409,996.58. How come we don't fill these in anymore? I've seen this a lot lately. Payroll deductions in the amount of $557,411.05. and payroll in the amount of $739,315.76. Action file issues. As an aside, please do, to the board members, do not leave tonight before we sign these. Do we have to sign these tonight?
Only you have to sign these permits, but the...
Okay, sorry, I just have to sign them, so.
Don't leave
So
without
make,
signing them.
so make a beeline as soon as the meeting's over.
But the full board has to sign the second
Alright.
page.
We can pass that down.
And this, and the green permit.
I thought we had 4 meetings, 4 minutes, no?
So any action file issues? I read today that the town of Harvard has adopted a community aggregation electric policy, and that policy is going to require that all their energy be generated by 100% renewable. Now, we already have an electric policy, why can't I say the word? Aggregation policy, and I'm wondering if we should ask the town manager through our, I think it's Colonial Power does our brokering to get the provider. We could put restrictions on what we want that provider to be as far as renewable energy. I don't know if the board wants to put that on a future agenda item to discuss.
Yeah, I think that would be good. You know, this, in the bills we got this month from Unitil, they included a little green pamphlet that says where our energy comes from. And would you know that there's just as much coal going through our lines as there is renewable sources of energy, which is 6%. 6%. So yes, I think it would be great to get above 6% renewable going through our power lines.
So let's put that on an agenda item at some point in the future. I don't know how long. It'd be good to know how long our current contract is for. And also what, even if we got them to issue what the current rates would be between the two, what we've been doing and what the renewable rates are, just to know. Because if there's going to be an increase, I don't think the town is going to be supportive. Depends, if they're even, then, or even if they're a touch higher, they may support it, but we should ask people's input on it. That's the only other action file I had. So we have just an old business, we have public comment policy and social media policy. So I distributed tonight, and it's on our Google Drive, the school committee of Natick, which had just recently had a Supreme Judicial Court case held on the fact that they were denying, the chair of the school committee in their town was denying some people rights to speak, and it got brought up to a case, so it changed their public policy on public comment. If you look at that document, it's basically, there's number 4, letter number 4. I think we should review the whole thing and see if we want to adopt this, but the most pertinent things are number 4 and number 8. So number 4, they call it public speak in their town. Public speak shall concern items that are not on the school committee's agenda, but which are within the scope of the school committee's authority. Therefore, any comments involving staff members or students must concern the educational goals, policies, or budget of the Natick Public Schools or the performance of the superintendent. Basically, they limit, you can't talk about things that are outside of the authority of the public body. So if we were to adopt this, you couldn't talk about things that had to do with, school committee decisions that are in the school committee's authority. We could stop public comment from somebody saying that. Not that we want to, but you could, because it's not within the jurisdiction of that. That is part number 1, and then number 8 goes into other things, and this is what got decided in that court case. It says the chair of the meeting may not interrupt speakers who have been recognized to speak, except that the chair reserves the right to terminate speech which is not constitutionally protected because it constitutes true threats, incitement to imminent lawless conduct, comments that were found by a court to be defamatory and/or sexually explicit comments made to appeal to prurient interests. Verbal comments will also be curtailed once they exceed the time limits, which you're allowed to have. But basically, those are the only reasons you can stop somebody from public comment. Again, it has not been an issue in our town, but it's good to have those in there. If somebody just wants to rail off a whole list of profanities in front of you, you're able to stop them. If they talk about things the things that have been declared to be defamatory. So somebody says bad things about somebody the first time, you can't interrupt them. Anyway, I thought this was a good addition to discuss for our public comment policies in town.
Does our current policy prohibit us from stopping someone from getting up here and cursing?
Yeah, we could look, what is the current policy?
I thought reading it, I thought it talked a lot about.
Well, I don't think, actually, I'm even mistaken, because it's not cursing, but if you made specifically sexually explicit comments, I don't think cursing is one that you can stop, because it's, again, the public comment period is viewed as constitutionally protected free speech. So if you can free speech profanity in the street, I guess, presumably, you could do it here. Although I'm not sure, really. Has there been a determination to that? I want to make sure your trip here out to Lunenburg. We asked.
You did. So it's tricky. You're right. Public comment sessions are entitled to some First Amendment protections, but not the full range of First Amendment protections. And so they have to be balanced against the right of a chair to sort of maintain decorum at his or her meeting. So I would generally advise chairs, if an individual gets to the microphone, even during a public comment session, and begins to be severely disrespectful, sort of cause a ruckus at the meeting, use profanities, that they can stop that.
Okay.
The Natick case was a little different because that's not what the school committee was doing.
No.
Right? I mean,
They were preventing they were preventing speech because of content, not form.
Right, and it wasn't content like obscenities or profanity.
That's what I'm saying. It wasn't form. It was content, what they were saying,
well,
not
exactly.
how they
and
were
it was
saying
topics that were clearly within the realm, the jurisdiction of the school committee. Bullying in the schools and hostile environment and things like that. And they were saying, no, we've had enough. Leave. So you can't do that.
They were kind of bullying.
Kind of bullying, right. So you can't tell them to sit down because you don't like what they're saying. But if they're causing a disruption to the meeting, then generally you can.
Okay, thank you.
And to answer the question, our current policy does not include anything about profanity or violence.
Well, I think in our cases, like there is number 2, all speakers are encouraged to present their remarks in a respectful manner. It doesn't say that you can't. It says they're encouraged, so I guess you can say that's really not a definitive rule. I like this group actually as almost in its entirety, and I'd like to compare it to ours, and I realize you guys are just seeing it today for the first time. So I'd like everybody to read this, and then let's discuss this and see what parts of this we want to adopt, because I think it is a very good and clear policy, obviously.
So interesting that, it concerns items that are not on the agenda.
Right, because if there's stuff that's on the agenda, you should wait till that agenda item is coming up and speak it then.
But often you don't have the opportunity for public comment during different agenda items if you don't speak about it at the beginning.
Well, we can, I hear your point. We don't have to adopt that. We could,
It just seems interesting.
I also don't want to limit, they're limiting the entirety of public comment to 15 minutes or something.
And having to sign up in advance.
Right, and signing up in advance. But I think we should have limits, and the limits should be, again, within, they have to be elastic. They can't be I'm not going to, if somebody has something they're going to say and takes them 3 minutes and 15 seconds, I'm not going to cut them off at 3 minutes. It makes no sense, and it just angers the whole point. I've said that very publicly.
Right.
I want people to be able to air their opinions and voice their comments. But you have to be able to point to something when you do say, okay, you know what, this is really clearly going over, which I've never done, by the way.
Yeah, that's a difficult.
Well, I don't encourage it. I think it just causes things to fester, so.
What is it, I mean, as we go back and review this, what is it that you're hoping that we can address?
That we revise our current public comment policy and maybe adopt some of these rules, maybe not. That's what I'm looking for. We already have a public comment policy.
Yeah.
And it's just in our policies.
Yeah.
Yes.
The thing that's most important to me is number 8, which is what you can, I'm sorry.
Sorry, 1.11? 1.11.
Okay, thanks.
You said number 8?
Number 8 is the one that tells people what the chair can stop people for.
Okay.
And I think we should include that because I think otherwise, I don't know that it'd ever get to a court case. I guess you have to have the certain people to this happen to, but I don't want people to be cut off because of the content of what they're going to say, because it's displeasing or puts the committee or commission that they're talking to in a bad light, which is what happened at the school committee, that school committee meeting in Natick.
Yeah, I think to protect the chair, there should be some rules about when it's okay to stop someone,
Well,
whether you exercise it or not.
we already do have a time limit, I believe, in our regulations.
Yes.
This, number 8, actually, I think, protects the person speaking.
Right.
Versus the chair.
Yes.
But also, it gives the chair some guidelines, I can cut someone off who is doing this, or the other.
Yeah,
thing.
those are high bars, by the way.
Yes, yes,
Right.
those
But
are
I think
high
it's
bars.
there to protect the speakers. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, while we have Attorney Costa
Yes.
here, can I ask him a question? In light of tonight's open meeting law complaint and about the public comment period, should we include any language that would preclude any further open meeting law complaints?
So it's a fair question. My concern, the risk that exists with a potential open meeting law complaint arising from public comment is really with board members making public comment. And to your point, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that it doesn't seem as if board members or the chair ought to be treated differently than members of the general public. If they can stand up and speak their mind, why shouldn't you be permitted to? Some of the open meeting law determinations suggest otherwise. They certainly suggest otherwise with respect to the chair, stating that if the chair has advance notice of what he or she is going to state at a meeting, that it ought to be on the agenda, particularly if it's prepared remarks. Although members of the public, if they're speaking during the public comment session, may arrive with prepared remarks, may not notify the chair, and yet those aren't on the agenda, but the chairs are supposed to be. But that seems to be what the Division of Open Government has said. So the concern really exists with board members, whether you want to adopt something as a part of a public comment policy that is addressed to board members as opposed to addressed to members of the public. I suppose you could do that, indicating that out of an abundance of caution, if any board member wishes to bring a topic forward at a meeting and discuss it in any great substance, read prepared remarks, they're advised to notify the chair at least 48 hours in advance so that it can be added to an agenda. That's to some extent overkill, because even the case law doesn't say that other members are held to that same standard, hence the confusion with the complaint today, because it was addressed to Mrs. Luck and not addressed to Mr. Alonso. It's really an obligation that's on the chair, but it is a fair question, but it's not, I've really got no concern about anything that members of the public might say, because unless they've come up to the chair in advance and said, I intend to say exactly this and read this prepared statement, and I'm going to solicit input from the board, in which case the chair should advise them that it should be on the agenda. Unless they do that, then getting up and even speaking for 5 or 10 minutes, if they were allowed to do so, as long as it's unanticipated, it's not a violation of the open meeting law.
Thank you.
Not to bring that up, just because you brought it up anyway, but not to prolong it, but I'm going to ask anyway. So it seems to me that one of the pivotal points on these cases was the prepared statement. So once again, I would bring up the fact that if somebody who, let's say, has acting practice and is good at memorizing, that they would be excluded because they could memorize a prepared statement and give it extemporaneously or appearing to be extemporaneous. And so you're going to penalize somebody who comes with a prepared statement. Seems yet another just complete contortion of what the whole point is of an open meeting law. Like, it was not a discussion point. It was not an agenda item to be discussed. There was no vote about it. There was no discussion taken on it. And I really find it hard to believe. My sense of fairness and sense of logic certainly indicate to me that I don't see how in the world that violates open meeting laws and the purpose of open meeting laws in furthering an agenda item and furthering discussion and deliberation on something when it's clearly, by its very nature and placement, is outside of that scope.
And we could debate all day, and it's not my job, and I shouldn't be saying that, I can certainly critique the open meeting law myself, but it's not my role as counsel. It's to advise you to be cautious. But, I mean, one of the most controversial aspects of the open meeting law within the past year to 18 months has been this concept of one-way communication that I referenced earlier. How is it that you can send a one-way communication to 3 other board members, hence a quorum, but solicit no feedback, receive no feedback, and yet that constitutes deliberation outside of an open meeting and is a violation of the open meeting law? The very typical sense of deliberation requires two, right? There has to be some, and yet the Division of Open Government has said that it's an open meeting law violation, even if everybody comes to the next meeting prepared to discuss it, but doesn't discuss it via email or on Facebook or by telephone prior to the meeting. It's still an open meeting law violation. That was a surprise to many when that decision was decided, but the division hasn't backed down from it. So sometimes the open meeting law, it sort of twists logic and sense of fairness and all that more than you'd like it to, but.
Is a division subject to open meeting law?
No.
I didn't think so.
Nor is the state legislature.
It was a rhetorical question. Yeah, but the legislation isn't making the decisions, right? All right. So if we can people review that, and then we have the social media policy. Is there anything in we're using as a template the town of Easton, as the introduction goes. We're using that as a model to discuss. Does anybody have any specific comments or questions for town council since town council's here? Otherwise, given the hour, I would say that let's discuss this. If it's only a deliberation amongst ourselves, we can table this. But does anybody have any questions for town council?
No.
Nope.
Nothing? All right, so we'll table that, and we're going to address this. There was a full agenda with a lot of things, so there's one item that we're going to continue on, and that's that one. Any public comment from the public? Any public comment from the board? Any non-prepared public comment from the board? All right. Our next meeting is next Tuesday. We have a workshop on September 10th. Then we have a meeting on the 17th. Also be aware that there is a board appreciation gathering at the Eagle House from 6 to 8 p.m. on September 19th. That is an appreciation night that we're going to be able to honor and recognize all volunteers in towns, elected and appointed officials, people who are interested in joining any of these or filling any of these vacancies or learning about these public bodies are encouraged to attend, so you can talk to members of those bodies and see what it is they do, whether it's FinCom or school committee or planning board or housing authority or zoning board of appeals, etc. It's a good time to do it, and it's a good time to really appreciate the people who are volunteering for all the boards. And the Unitil Storm Resiliency Plan is going to be rescheduled, right?
Correct, probably October 1st.
Probably October 1st, okay. All right, I would entertain a motion.
To adjourn?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None. Good night, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Have a good night.